Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for waiting. I am so sorry to be, well, I guess more than 5 minutes late, 13 minutes late to be exact. I just had a great meeting. If it's any consolation on the fact that you guys had to wait, I just had a great meeting that I can't tell you about right now, but I promise I will one day. Oh no, Rumble's not working. Oh no. Why aren't you working, Rumble? Well, I guess sorry to people watching on Rumble. Hopefully, I guess that's not going to work for today, but we're just going to have to make do. We are streaming, of course, on YouTube as we always do, on Odyssey, Rockfin, not Rumble today, apparently, but we are streaming on Gitter, so at least that's working. And I apologize to anyone who might find this later from Rumble. But no, I just had a really, really great and exciting meeting that again, I can't talk about right now, but let's just say that it was pretty much the first time in a year, probably more than a year, that I talked to someone that actually understood how big of a problem the woke stuff is, and we are completely on the same page with what the problem is. We are completely on the same page with what needed to be done about the problem. And it was just like it was a absolute breath of fresh air. And I was like, "Oh my god." I've gotten so frustrated at times over the last year and a half, um, because I really feel like I have a extremely good grasp on what this problem is and how it needs to be solved by sheer virtue of doing what we're doing today. I have watched a metric F ton of this content. And I feel like, and this is I'm gonna work through some feelings for a second. We're gonna watch our socialist stream. Don't get it twisted. We're gonna watch socialism in a second. But like it feels so good to finally talk to someone who actually understands it. And I know many of you guys do understand it because you watch a lot of this content with me. But really, for the last year and a half, I have very much felt like I have been banging my head against the wall constantly, almost every single day of my life, trying to get people to understand this problem. And they just don't. And it's like willful. And so to finally talk to someone who was like totally got it, I was like, thank God there is still sanity in the world. Okay, apparently I'm back. I definitely lost it for a second. I'm exporting a video right now. It should be done pretty soon. So that should clear that right up. But guys, welcome to our 5 o'clock stream. Now, today we're going to be doing something. And listen, I'm going to be honest. I just can't get this surrogacy thing out of my head. I had no idea this was an actual thing until we watched the socialism conference over the weekend. Now, of course, I knew that we had that in dystopian literature um they had talked about like having kids via like basically having these birthing centers in 1984. They talk about how they want to get rid of the orgasm so that women stop having sex, they stop procreating, and they do everything through artificial insemination. That puts birth in complete control by the state, who gets to have kids, what the genetic makeup of the kids is. This is basically like eugenics if we're honest about it. They get to control every aspect of it. You don't have those familiar ties. And so if you don't have the family structure, then there's no one else to be loyal to except for the state. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get rid of the family structure because family, love, it will always trump, no pun intended, loyalty to the state. And so we saw this happen in 1984 where they were trying to get rid of the orgasm and do everything through artificial insemination. In Brave New World, everyone is a test tube baby. Everyone belongs to everyone else. In Brave New World, it was the opposite problem with sex, right? Because in 1984, they want no sex. In Brave New World, they're sleeping with everyone. But they're also on birth control, and they're not having kids, and they're not having families, and they're not having relationships. Those relationships are not real. They're not allowed to have exclusive relationships. Everyone belongs to everyone else. That's what it says in Brave New World. In The Giver, a children's book, The Giver, they have birthing centers and people who are designed to be birth mothers, and they take the children from the birth mothers and they give them to the approved family in order to raise. And so these were concepts that I had, and many of us have encountered in like dystopian fiction. And I bet many of you are the same. I have a strange fascination with dystopian fiction and dystopian literature in general, but I had never encountered these things in real life up until this past weekend when we were watching the socialism conference, and this woman who was on the transgendered Marxism panel started talking about how surrogacy should be how kids are had. And this woman has actually, who we're going to watch today, has written a couple books. She wrote Abolish the Family, a manifesto for care and liberation, and Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against Family. This is who we're watching today. I have not been able to get this woman out of my head. I have not been able to get this concept out of my head. And so I was actually planning on doing something completely different today. And no, we're going full surrogacy. Okay? I want to watch it. I want to know what this woman is talking about. So I found this stream with her that she did just 10 days ago. 10 days ago, premiered on August 28th, 2022. So this is an extremely new stream, and it's called Problem of the Family, Meeting 9, Sophie Lewis. I don't know what Meeting 9 stands for, but this is the woman who wrote this. And so I want to hear what she say. I want to learn more about this plan to have all birth via surrogacy. She is a legitimate socialist, okay? So oftentimes we might joke about, well, we're not really joking. Like the Marxist revolution that we're all in. The Marxist revolution is a very real thing. The woke cultural revolution is a very real thing. But when you're talking about CNN or MSNBC or the current Democratic Party, they're not socialists. Not like this person is a socialist. They're play pretend socialists. They're LARPing socialism in order to use it as a talking point in order to gain more power. They're basically what's going on is the media and the Democratic Party are useful idiots for the real socialists. She is a real socialist. She will call you comrade. She will she speaks at conferences like Socialism 2022, which we just watched the other day. This is a real socialist, not play pretend socialism. That's what we're getting into today. And I'm starting to have a strange fascination with this sort of stuff because I feel like this is a preview. This is a preview of where we're going to go. Because if you watch legitimately socialist presentations from like 5-6 years ago, what they were saying in those presentations are now the talking points of the Democratic Party. This is not theoretical. These people are winning. They are driving culture. They are driving the Overton window. The talking points that they have today, and again, this presentation was streamed 10 days ago. The talking points that they have today will become the talking points of the Democratic Party tomorrow. So, I think we should listen. I think we should maybe be paying attention. I'm not sure anyone else on the internet is actually showing you this specific type of content. So I hope you're all hunkered down. The stream is 1 hour and 40 minutes long. I don't know how far we're going to get through it. We did a 5-hour stream yesterday of reading gender-specific books for kindergarteners in Seattle. I've got a clip coming of that, by the way. If you don't want to watch that full 5-hour stream, that clip that I was exporting is the clip of the book. So we got something coming for that. But we're going full socialist today, ladies and gentlemen. We are going full socialist. Hello, comrades. Instead of being comrades, you are all comrades. Mount the like button for me if you consider yourself a comrade, part of my cult. Yep, just Carlin and the comrades. Watch this stuff. We will be the people that will not be surprised when a year and a half from now, Don Lemon starts talking about surrogacy and how great it is. We will be the people that will not be surprised. So, guys, mount that like button for me. We're going to get started in a sec. Just want to do a couple quick plugs. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is, of course, how you can support my work. And there's special relevance to this because we've started movie night in my community. And we've had a couple movie nights. We had Soylent Green. Just this past weekend, we had 1984. Coming up on Sunday, just for supporters in my community, we will be watching Demolition Man for movie night in the supporter Discord Sunday at 8 p.m. I haven't made the promo yet because I just found out about this yesterday because I have the best community and my community actually plan things for me that I don't have to plan myself. So shout out to those behind Demolition Man movie night, but it will be Sunday night, 8 p.m., Demolition Man in the supporter Discord. How do you get access to the supporter Discord, you ask? I'm happy you ask. I'm glad to tell you. There are several ways that you can get access to my supporter Discord. One is by becoming a member on this channel. Becoming just a member of the channel. That's an easy way to do it. Another way to do it is by joining my Patreon. There are monthly supporting levels all the way from $5 a month to $250 a month, depending on what kind of perks you want to get, what you want to get back for your support, how much you want to help me out. But you can start at $5 a month if you want to. That's totally cool. That will get you into the supporter Discord. If you don't want to do Patreon, which I totally understand because Patreon can sometimes donate, because it can sometimes cancel people, and I totally get it. I do have my locals community, kb.locals.com, in which you can become a member for $5 a month or $50 a year. And also, Sin is asking me to remind you, on the supporter Discord, we do have writers group tonight. So writers group at 8 p.m. I think it's at 8 p.m. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sin. There's writers group at 8 p.m. tonight as well. So please make sure if you're in the Discord, you go to writers group. Writers group is awesome. If you want to be creative, you're doing creative projects, that's another great thing you can get involved with. But you can become a member of my locals community and get access to all of this. You can also become a paying member of my Substack. All my Substack articles are free, whether that's on the Actively Unwoke Substack or the Red Pill Diaries Substack. They are all free. You only pay if you want to support the work I'm doing and get access to the Discord. Oh, sorry. Writers group is at 7 p.m. My B. 8 p.m. for movie night on Sunday, 7 p.m. for writers group tonight. Sorry about that, Sin. That's a way you can get access to it as well, by becoming a paying member on the Substack. And if you really, 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 really want to make me happy, you can donate to the Schools Exposed crowdfunding campaign. I am building an online training program that I am bound and determined to run 10,000 parents through in order to teach them how to find what the schools are teaching their kids with publicly available information, because what we're finding is a lot of it's already out there. You don't even need to do FOIA requests a lot of the time. There's a lot of information that parents have access to. Many of them don't know they have access to it, and they don't know how to find it, even if they did know how to have access to it. I am going to teach them. I'm going to take all the skills I learned as an organizational psychologist about doing corporate training programs. I'm going to apply it to creating an army of parents to fight back against the woke left in this country. That is what I'm working on right now. I was very, very lucky and blessed to be able to meet my funding goal of $10,000 in but 4 days after I launched the campaign. I haven't been pushing the campaign as much since then, but I would really, really like to continue to drive up that number. Mostly because that means that I'm getting parents in the program. It also means I'm creating word of mouth about the program. And very selfishly, I would like a marketing budget for the program, because it's going to take a grassroots word of mouth effort in order to get the word out to 10,000 parents. And so now I'm at the stage where I'm pretty sure I have my technology costs covered. I'm pretty sure I know I have my course development time covered. Now I need a marketing budget, and I also need a budget to be able to FOIA things, because we can't find everything publicly available. We sometimes have to actually send in FOIA requests. FOIA requests sadly cost money, and I want to be able to dedicate a portion of the proceeds to funding FOIA requests. And if you donate to this campaign, and again, it starts at $5 not even a month, $5, you will get access to the supporter Discord to come join us for movie night on Sunday. There's some great perks available. I won't bore you guys with those now, but you can go and check out the campaign yourself at unwokearmy.com/parents, and that will redirect you to this Indiegogo campaign, where you can learn about the campaign, see what perks are available. And if you make a donation, you will get access to the supporter Discord, so you can come and join us for not just this movie night, but all future movie nights as well. So we look forward to seeing you guys there. All right, who wants to watch some socialism? Is everyone ready for some socialism? Does everyone want to see the socialists talking about how we will abolish the family and have all births via surrogacy? I cannot even believe that this is real life. This is one of those things that might be this might break me. I'm going to be honest, this might break me. Guys, mount that like button if you are ready to watch some socialism. And here we go.
And I'm here to introduce our speaker, Sophie Lewis. I'll say a couple of words about sort of where we are in the arc of our studies. This is the beginning of a 2-session dive into family abolitionist politics as part of our middle segment of revolution.
Anytime you hear the word abolition, you need to think communism. And we know this from the socialist conference that she was at, because there was a speaker at the socialism conference that says abolition will be complete when the communist revolution is concluded. So anytime they say abolition, they don't mean freedom and liberty like you and I might think of freedom and liberty. They literally mean communism. Communist revolution is complete. That is when there will be abolition. Same with liberation. If you hear them say abolition or liberation, then that means communism.
Critiques of the family. Che Gossett introduced family abolition as a concept alongside other abolitionist frameworks last week.
Abolition.
Here, let's see. Can I unpin you, Wendy?
Yes, I just wanted to
Brooklyn Way, I'll send you a link to the Discord.
Sophie, I just wanted to spotlight your upcoming event and a couple others. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, we definitely should do event announcements.
Okay, great.
No, we should not do event announcements.
Yeah, just before we get to Sophie, we have a couple upcoming events which I will put in the chat. The soonest being a release celebration and reading and discussion for Emmy's co-authored book, Everything for Everyone, an Oral History of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072.
Brooklyn Way, I just
DM'd
you the
Sunday,
Discord
September
link.
4th. I'm just gonna put the Eventbrite link in the chat. Where's chat? Here we go. And then also, if you go to the Power Praxis site, which I'll put a link to that as well, you'll see we also have two other forthcoming events. One is a talk on the keyword melancholy, and that'll be on September 17th. And that's with Anne Chang, Ranjana Khanna, David Ng, and it's moderated by Jane Hugh.
All right, I don't care. Sorry, I don't care about their events. I don't care. I want to hear socialism.
Now, just under our threshold of planning to stay in the whole group. So we are currently not planning to do breakout groups and instead end 15 minutes earlier or so. And currently we're doing it week by week based on whether more than 50 people or less than 50 people come roughly. So we're very excited to have Sophie Lewis here today, who has been a program participant in our seminar series, as well as one of certainly the most important leading intellectuals of critiques of the family, reproductive justice, thinking about communism and gender.
See, communism and gender.
A minute ago said this is part of our kind of arc in the seminar, where this middle section is about radical, largely non-psychoanalytic, but not entirely non-psychoanalytic critiques of the family, placing these in dialogue with psychoanalytic critiques. And this is the Che Gossett introduced briefly family abolition as a concept alongside other abolitionisms.
Family abolition means getting rid of the family.
And then this session and our next session in 2 weeks, where Madeline Lane McKinley will talk about my article, and an article by Kathy Weeks will be our sort of real focus on family abolition as a theme. And we were very lucky this time to get early access to Sophie Lewis's book. I hope everyone has pre-ordered it with our discount.
Look how excited they are about abolishing the family. Look how excited.
But I strongly encourage everyone to pre-order the book if you haven't as well. Hopefully you managed to get a hold of a digital copy. So I'll go ahead and read Sophie's bio and then let them take it away. Sophie Lewis is a writer living in Philadelphia as an Anglo-Franco-German transplant. Her analyses of feminist anti-utopianisms, octopus documentaries, and heterosexual televisual artifacts have in fact been published mainly in the US. Sophie is the author of Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against Family, hailed by Donna Haraway as the seriously radical cry for full gestational justice that I long for.
Full gestational justice.
Abolish the Family, a manifesto for care and liberation. Grace Lavery.
Hang on. Full gestational justice. These people view having all kids via surrogacy, or like all kids being like test tube babies or like a birthing center, as being full reproductive justice. Just wrap your heads around that. And I'm not saying, I don't think there's anything wrong with surrogacy. But what the hell?
Describes as charting, quote, a new and necessary course for Marxist feminism. As a member of the faculty of the Brooklyn Institute for Social Research, Sophie teaches courses on feminist theory, trans and queer politics, and anti-work philosophy, online and open to all. Previously, Dr. Lewis studied English literature and nature, society, and environmental policy at Oxford University, politics at the New School for Social Research, and geography at Manchester University, where she completed a PhD. Writing by Lewis appears in venues ranging from Harper's and Boston Review to the New York Times and London Review of Books, as well as peer-reviewed journals such as Science, Paragraph, and Feminist Theory. With the Out of the Woods Writing Collective, Lewis co-authored the collection Hope Against Hope, Writings on Ecological Crisis, published by Common Notions in 2020. As an editor at Blind Field Journal, she helps foster communities of Marxist feminist cultural criticism. A visiting scholar at the University of Pennsylvania Center for Research on Feminist, Queer, and Transgender Studies, Sophie is nevertheless a freelance writer sustained by her Patreon, which you are highly encouraged to donate to on a regular basis. Her lectures, podcast appearances, and essays are archived at LASOPHIELLE.org. I'll put that in the chat. She tweets at Repro Utopia. So please, Sophie Lewis.
Yeah, you disgusting people with profane perceptions. I agree with you,
I didn't realize
Sabrits.
that would be so long.
And
Thank you very
incognito,
much
they
for
want
that
power
generous
so much that
introduction.
everything is justice.
And hi,
Even
everyone.
abolishing the
from
family is
Lenny
justice.
Lenape land, known as Philadelphia. And thanks for spending some of your Sunday with me to think about the abolition of the family and the idea of children.
Yes, let's think about the
especially
idea
to
of
Hannah
children,
Zebin,
shall we?
And to my longtime friend and comrade Emmy, and to Alex Colston and
Drink
Wendy
every
Washington
time they say
for inviting me
comrade.
and then arranging with Verso for these advanced e-copies to be available, and not least for commissioning me to write an essay of auto-analysis for the first issue of the hotly anticipated Parapraxis magazine, whose first issue will be about the family. The experience of writing that was generative and terrifying in all the best ways. Likewise, I've just found it extraordinarily rewarding to participate in this first, hopefully the first of many series of the Psychosocial Foundation's seminars, so auspiciously kicked off on Mother's Day. Helping facilitate to the best of my ability when possible. As you know, today I'm going to talk a little bit about Dr. Madeline Lane McKinley's essay, The Idea of Children. Hello, Madeline, and its influence on my thinking and teaching. And then I'm going to try to summarize my quote unquote manifesto for care and liberation, which you read.
I keep thinking she's saying care and liberation, not parent liberation, care and liberation.
Patients and themes in this seminar series feel apparent. Unsurprisingly, given our years of thinking together, I've been incredibly well set up by ME for this session with Dr. Gossett's presentation last week on the abolition of Moynihan's quote unquote Negro family, covering very much that I would want to say here, and in some ways more. Much of what I tried to say in chapter 2, which is called Abolish Which Family. And ME's own essay on the history and historically evolving meanings of the call to abolish the family in the context of 20th century class struggle, occupying us next week, alongside Kathy Weeks's invaluable, even more recent paper on the abolition of the family as feminism's most infamous proposal, this time with Madeline leading us. So in that context, when we talked about what might be most generative to focus on for this session, again, given next week's menu, and the fact that part 2 on the revolutionary horizon has already guided us through Engels, Kollontai, Darling.
Okay, I just want to pause this for people who have not watched socialist content before, because what you need to prepare yourself for is that she's going to use a lot of words sometimes that don't mean anything. If there are points during this presentation where you do not understand what she's saying, it has nothing to do with you. It's the fact that socialists have their own language, and it's only by watching it and immersing yourself in it that you can really start to understand their language, and sometimes it takes a minute. So if it sounds like to you like she's saying a lot of words that don't mean anything, just go ahead and do some word salad in the chat. Like Judy is. Like put some word salad in the chat. But don't think that there's anything wrong with you or you're misunderstanding it. It's just that this is how they talk. And you only learn this when you watch a lot of socialist content. And so just hang in there. We're going to get through it, I promise. But this is just the reality of these people.
Costa and James, Davis, Spillers, and King, Tiffany Latabo King, we thought that it might be most useful to make space for revolutionary, perhaps almost consciousness-raising, inspired reflection on the sort of psychical and psychological dimensions of the abolition of the family, especially our quite possibly universal resistance to this infamous proposal. So yeah, in Abolish the Family, as you know, if you had time to read it, before I dig in to a potted history of the family, the history of family abolitionism, which I see as a kind of, or I try to tell as a sort of dual strand history, the two strands being, as it were, inside and outside the house of legitimate familiality. I begin, right, with a chapter that's playfully entitled, you know, "But I love my family," in order to try to engage, acknowledge, and assuage, even if only partially, that psychic terror that the proposition "abolish the family" elicits. And
I might finish my shawl during this stream.
Essay is doing much of that same.
Wouldn't that be great?
Work. It was published in 2018 in a moment that was defined by a spike in immigration and customs enforcement, kinship violence, you know, which is a primary technology of this settler colony. And so happily, given the timing, I was able to cite it almost last minute in Full Surrogacy Now, which, you know, was my previous offering, which I believe, you know, neither I nor my publisher really expected anyone to read. And luckily it sort of worked out that, you know, there is some appetite for clarification of the almost, yeah, the almost not quite buried, but sort of, you know, not centered, you know, family abolitionist
yes,
program.
They are crazy.
That Gestator's manifesto. You know,
they don't know they're crazy.
Like most of what I do, tries to grapple with the problem of what anti-work horizons in the context of care work look like, or, you know, how does anti-work in the context of care work work? How does that tension, you know, guide our politics, especially given that Full Surrogacy Now has, as you can probably hear from the title, a sort of, you know, a call for labor as well, you know, like it's a call for a sort of turning inside out of proprietarian, authorial parenting, you know, such that the very word surrogacy would be impossible because children do not belong to anyone. But that's not what I'm here to talk about, so I'm sorry for the digression. I was, you know, the idea of children was by no means the only trace of Lane McKinley in that book, since I've been learning from and thinking with Madeline since about 2016 around themes like, you know, wages against housework, critical utopianism, which is a sort of lens and method.
Shut up, bot.
I've learned, yeah, a lot from Madeline concerning.
These ladies
what
watch
else?
too much Demolition Man. Not enough Demolition Man, I would argue,
approaches
incognito.
to
Not
that
enough.
very problematic fave, Shulamith Firestone.
Not enough.
Whose call to abolish childhood, I believe we both agree, surely got backwards, which is why in the idea of children, we have the abolition of adulthood, right? The dissolution of the border between adulthood and childhood, which is a horizon that goes far beyond inclusivity,
Well,
right? The inclusion of children.
I worry,
society.
Sabrits, that it doesn't matter, though.
I will say that that's
You're not wrong.
just something that becomes more and more relevant. You know,
and yet they're winning.
Recent social media discourse
She said nothing
was
so far.
you know,
She has said literally nothing,
disappointing,
and
really,
she's winning.
in terms of the left's willingness to think about, you know, those we
Yes,
currently
abolish
call
childhood.
children
Yes.
as
those
you
we
know,
call children.
persons to obviously, you know, struggle.
Did you hear that? Those we call children. So one of the things that I've noticed in several streams that we've been doing lately is that they're not calling students in school anymore. They're calling them scholars. Why are they doing that? Why are they calling children scholars? They're not scholars. They're in public school. They're not scholars. They're doing it because they don't want you to think of them as children. They want you to think of them as little miniature adults. So yeah, abolish childhood, those we call children. These are not accidents that they're doing this. It's like Scientology. Scientology thinks of children as little adults.
With, you know, as comrades, rather than segregate, you know, apart from proper political life. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm very digressional. So
oh, hang on.
Give me signs to stay back on topic.
Hang on, Scott. Those we call they're secret pedos. No, they're not secret. They're not secret. Look at all the content that's been coming out lately, talking about minor attracted persons, because minor attracted person, or MAP, is what they call pedos. And they changed it to minor attracted person because they think that the word pedophile is a little too stigmatizing. And I promise you, one of their next steps, and I wrote an article about this on my Substack not too long ago, one of their next steps is going to be, they are going to try to make minor attracted people a protected class. Mark my words. They're trying to do this already with trans people, which I actually don't mind it in terms of trans people. I really don't. I don't actually really care. But that's their next step. They're going to say, people can't help if they're born attracted to minors. It's just the way they're born. It's just the way their brain works. It's just like being born gay. It's just like being born trans. It's no different. And that's how they're going to make them a protected class. And do you know what happens once minor attracted people become a protected class? That means they can't get fired from their jobs for being a minor attracted person, even if they are a kindergarten teacher or a janitor in a school or a bus driver or any job where they have to be around kids. They could, if they make minor attracted person a protected class, they could literally have people have minor attracted person all over their social media, be posting all over the internet about it. And they still will not be able to be fired from their job as a kindergarten teacher because you can't fire them for something that is a protected class. And by the way, they're also going to use it to try to sue people for not hiring people who are minor attracted people. They're going to say, you didn't hire me because I had MAP in my Twitter profile, and they're going to win. They're going to win. That's where we're going, and that is not a joke. That is not hyperbolic. That is not a joke. That is not out of left field. This is entirely based on things that they are telling us right now. People got to start waking up to the fact that this is a problem. This is not just entertainment. This is a problem. This is a really big effing problem.
So yeah, so the idea of children is something I've been returning to ever since I read it in 2018. There's also really clamor for it. You know, people ask for it to be included in my Brooklyn Institute for Social Research courses, which is very smart of them, because it only becomes more relevant. It's certainly I was thinking of at the end of this 22 tab for today, where, alongside and also the critical utopianist from the UK, Lola Olu, who's the author of Experiments in Otherwise, which I really recommend you read. We try to suggest that while keeping families together and ending family separation are political imperatives, right, and calls to action for all white race traitors, still
Sin, you found her on Twitter.
And we try to,
thank you, Sin.
I'm trying to grapple in that final sort of goodbye to the manifesto, and how fighting the family.
Oh, yep, there she is. There she is.
18,000
followers on Twitter.
Different things at once, right? Prizing the state's neck off the boot off the neck of a legal family of aliens, right? And really advancing that horizon of no human is illegal and so on. And at the same time, offering solidarity to a queer kid in that same, family, should she need it, against her parents, right? And those things are in tension, which is why I'm really hoping that we have more opportunity in the future to really get into how abolition of family policing, right, and family abolition can be in sort of dialectic conversation and collaboration with one another.
She has 280 people who are supporting her monthly on Patreon. So I'm making it that $1,100 a month. So it's like not actually that much, but she does like that's still like a significant number of people. And her Patreon levels are, her first Patreon level is Team Erotic Octopus. She also has the Family Abolition Experiment. Wow.
That's the whole thing, really. And Madeleine's question, how would you talk to a child about family abolition, as I say, has been the guiding light in more than one of my my little courses that I teach at BISSER. I think there are participants in those courses in the room today. And what really came out of the idea of children essay in my teaching, in my classrooms, as it were, was this like a deep sort of attention to what Madeleine calls the ongoing friction with conditions of unimaginability, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to open up today in terms of the terror we feel about that unimaginability. I think Kathy Weeks almost goes sort of further and asserts that as subjects materially and psychically constituted by the Oedipal kinship story, we are, not even fully capable of desiring the abolition of the family today. And so that's what Kathy Weeks also in a talk phrased as the future is not for us. Very, very alarming and sort of upsetting proposition if you hear it in a certain way. Not necessarily, right? If you're willing to, to engage with it, in a in a way that's sort of happy to kind of almost dwell in the the abolition of the self. But another Blindfield journal editor, Johanna Isaacson, has actually written about this in a little essay at Blindfield about abolish the family, which begins from this central critical utopianist premise, which is that the future perhaps is not for us, but it there's this very long task.
Critical references critical theory, by the way. Every time they say critical, you got to think critical theory.
Kind of not quite desirable,
that's where this stuff comes from.
Horizon of the category of child and adult no longer obtaining in the way that it does today, nevertheless remains something it might be worthwhile to
It's a lot of salad
towards.
bot.
So yeah, that was one of the themes.
It's a lot of salad right there.
A class on quote unquote children's liberation, right? Which
Children's
very
liberation.
much like abolish
Oh,
the
good.
family,
Oh, good.
is a sort of horizon and demand, if you like, that has been very actively buried, actively sort of forgotten and erased during the 80s, such that today, you know, it hits people's ears as you know, as words that have never been uttered before, right? As concepts that have never been, you know, articulated before. Whereas that's not the case at all, right? There was, you know, 50 years ago, some degree of familiarity, you know, on the far left in revolutionary milieus with these sorts of precepts. And so a lot of my work has, and Madeleine's has got to do with this kind of, you know, critical, comradely sort of unburying, right, and remembering. Yeah, so that's some of what that side of things sort of speaks to me today. My Abolish the Family text, yeah, as I mentioned this thing, the dual strand history. So that, yeah, that's kind of the structure of this history for me, and we can get more into the nitty-gritty tomorrow with the end notes. You know, it almost a short book in itself, really. I think it's basically the same length as my book, to Abolish the Family. But you know, my much sort of, I suppose I'm taking more liberties here, trying to tell a story where you know, indigenous,
Please make a point.
Enslaved and transported individuals in the US, you know, can perhaps be understood as operating, not, I mean, so some revolutionary horizons within those populations can be understood as, you know, family abolitionists, even if that vocabulary has not been, you know, much in circulation, because of these critiques that Dr. Gossett drew out so well last week, which posits, again, the sort of impossibility of an entity like the Black family, and posits a kind of excess to the horizon of sort of Black becoming that would never be sort of containable or even admissible, really, to the proprietarian logic of the private nuclear household. So part of my work in chapter 2 was to go back into archives of, you know, 60s, you know, queer liberationism, gay liberationism, you know, so-called third worldist and third world liberationist convergences, where I was sort of, surprised to find traces of, you know, very affirmative family abolitionism, family destructionism, coming from, you know, Black organizers that I wasn't aware until I really went and looked that there are politics like this in anthologies like This Bridge Called My Back, right? And so I'm in conversation with, you know, with people. I suppose I mentioned them.
I don't believe for one red second that there is any significant amount of Black people anywhere who want to abolish the family. I'm not saying like onesies and twosies fine. There are Black communists, like a lot of people that went with Jim Jones to Ghana. They were like, a lot of them were Black and they were communists, like literally. So I'm not saying that doesn't exist. It probably does, but you're not going to convince me that a significant portion of the Black population want to abolish the family. That makes no sense.
at the end of the book, and also in chapter 2, like Annie Olaluku Tariba, who's also based in the UK, Lola Olufemi, but then also these 70s figures such as Kay Lindsay and Pat Parker. And this comes from a perspective that seeks to, you know, not just liberate children from their status as, you know, the poorest people in the world. You know, that's just one thing that, you know.
They want to liberate children from their status as the poorest people in the world. Okay. What does that mean? Are children going to go out and get a job?
Is sort of central. Like, you know, children are poor. But also from their status as kind of, you know, patriarchal possessions, really. And so, you know, the line of critique that has, I think, to some extent disappeared, not just from feminism, but from leftism in general, but which is sort of really being revived by the people I just mentioned from an anti-racist perspective. Is this idea that, you know, motherhood needs to be distinguished from the potentially transformative, potentially comradely, and certainly gender open, gender inclusive, or, you know, perhaps ungendered labor of mothering. Funnily enough, that, you know, that's also something that, you know, Adrienne Rich said, you know, fundamentally, right, in Of Woman Born, we get the dialect tension between motherhood, which is an institution of property, and mothering, which is a potentially liberatory, cooperative and collaborative praxis. And yeah, you know, I'm a bit of a magpie. I sort of take these ideas and try and bring them together. You know, for me, the horizon of mothering,
they view parents as oppressors. You're right.
Can generatively be thought together with, you know, xenofeminist concepts like, you know, xeno-hospitality, where, you know, perhaps relations that are given to us, you know, biologically, legitimately, you know, legally, can be defamiliarized by thinking about the difference between proprietarian relations like motherhood and dynamic relational processual ones like mothering. So perhaps.
Did you just hear that? She distinguished between motherhood, which she called a proprietarian relationship, which means, I'm guessing, please correct me if you think I'm wrong, that she's saying that motherhood is different from mothering because motherhood implies that the parent has ownership over the child, whereas mothering is going to be taking care of the little human who apparently needs to be liberated from the family structure. Oh my God.
You know, beyond simply the fact that, as Helen Hester puts it, you know, xenofam, you know, so xenofam being relations that are, you know, made explicitly,
xenofam,
alienly, adoptively, is, you know, equal to or greater than biofam being the relations that,
what the fuck,
you know, are imagined as immutable, biological, given. We could all
xenofam or biofam. This is legit Orwellian. Xenofam or biofam. And she just said that the biological relationship is imaginary. This is like when in 1984 they combined the words artificial insemination and they said it's called artsem. Xenofam and biofam. She's doing the same thing. Xenofam, outsider family. Yes. Yeah, it's like the idea of family of choice is not like an out of this world concept. A lot of people have a family of choice where maybe they don't have great relationships with their family, and so they develop relationships with other people and they become their family of choice. So this is not like an out of this world concept. People do this every day. But to specifically say we're going to build an entire society on the xenofam because the biofam is an imagined relationship, that's straight insanity.
Also imagine, and I think this is important, that the people we think we have, right, the people we think we have and know might in fact be xeno as well. Be you know, the imperative to really respect, for example, people who literally come out of our bodies comes from, right? Annie Olaloku Tariba got a hell of a lot of, you know, hostility really on social media not so long ago for suggesting that, you know, motherhood is patriarchal, and that a lot of, including Black mothers are, you know, patriarchal in their treatment of children. But this, as I say, was, you know, was a conversation that was active and live in the long 60s. And part of the conversation we need to have is about the mechanisms, the reasons, the material conditions for that active burial and forgetting, right? Yeah, I don't know. This has all been very sort of unstructured. I can see Michelle.
She drives a Tesla. How very capitalist of her.
Plan for this. So I think
yes,
I've gone for
let's put some more structure. Yes,
correct?
let's
Perhaps
put some more structure in. I need you to be asked questions and to
conversation
answer to those
here.
questions.
Does that sound acceptable?
Yeah, let's do direct questions to you for 15 minutes or so, and then take a 5-minute break and then open it up for a wider discussion. I have a direct question. So you started talking about the sort of the psychic space of family abolition as a demand, as a concept, and particularly the resistance that that provokes for people. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit about the desire around it, the sort of psychic space it opens up that you have encountered in your own teaching and your own thinking and your speaking, like when people start connecting the family abolition as a concept, what happens in their minds and hearts?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think so. For several years, I've been really moved and excited and perhaps surprised by the amount of enthusiasm that has come from people going through childbirth, for example, for the concepts in full surrogacy now, for a sort of deprivatized or you know, unproprietarian, anti-proprietarian relation between carers, motherers, and children.
Deprivatized relationship between the mothering characters and the children. She just told us that women who have given birth are in favor of deprivatizing the familiar relationship between those who mother and the children. Depropertize. And oh my God. What do you guys think deprivatize means? Deprivatize means that they're putting the family structure deliberately in the public domain, i.e. the domain of the state. TPS says I think it's one of the greatest risks to children is an unrelated male. These idiots either hate their parents or hate their own children. The giver is a warning. Yeah. They want to make the family relationship a public matter to depropertize. So what she's telling us there is she does not believe in private property. Because she wants to depropertize. She has this sense that children are the property of their parents. So she wants to take away She wants to take away what she perceives as children being private property. Do you really think that only applies to just children? Public domain children. All your children belong to the state. There would be no mothers anymore. She's not even using the word mother. She says mothering figures. We still have an hour to go, guys. Hunker down.
I think what happens with people is frequently described to me as a sort of initial spasm of fear. Like when you hear something like full surrogacy now or abolish the family, you know, you think, oh no, like everything is so bad and unbearable under capitalism and
capitalism, ding 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 ding
climate
ding ding
catastrophe, and rising fascism. You know, the sphere of the family is the only good thing I've got going on for some people, right? And it could also have a lot of bad stuff going on in it at the same time, but in some ways it's experienced as, you know, if not entirely, you know, a haven away from work, because I think it's very well understood these days, even if not sufficiently, you know, that the home is a workplace, is a terrain that works, you know, that has work. But people still feel that there's a little bit more comfort there, you know, decommodified social relations, you know. So it's really terrifying to hear someone say, no, you know, you shouldn't have that or something, you know? Like, we're taking that away, you know, we're taking grandma away, we're taking your children away. Like, and it's sort of the opposite in a way when people begin to understand, okay, no, you know, I think I try to put it in one place as the family being a sort of technology or you know, mode of doing existence that is taken up very rationally and very reasonably by people as a kind of shield to survive a war, that deserves full respect and even support. But if we think that the shield, you know, is nature, if we begin to forget that it was a shield, we're forgetting that the war perhaps doesn't have to go on forever. And so I think when people begin to understand, yeah, it's about proliferation and abundance, and, you know, about giving the people we love more abundance, more care, more freedom, more autonomy, then I think it becomes sort of the opposite of scary. It's as though the wisdom and, you know, skill that we develop in these cracks between commodified social relations could be, you know, given full breath for the first time. And
by the way, did you notice that she changed her name on Twitter? Because she did. You got her to change her name. She's so pissed off that you started using this name on YouTube. She got, this is a different topic for people who don't know. She changed her name on Twitter. Just saying.
And that's,
guys, mount that like button if you appreciate that I'm showing you this insanity. Because you know other people on YouTube ain't showing you this insanity and explaining what this is. So, show some appreciation even if you think this is insane. I appreciate it.
sort of that blackmail that forces them into these choked little pockets.
Families are blackmail.
You know, being removed might be a really exciting, really comradely sort of way of being, you know. Yeah,
it would be a really comradely way of being.
I've had people explain to me that, you know, they're so relieved that some of these conversations about nature and denaturalization, and, you know, polymaternalism are
polymaternalism.
They are, for example,
polymaternalism. So this is the whole. She basically just said, like, sister wives, right? This is the whole, like, it takes a village to raise a child thing. Polymaternalism just means sister wives. That's all it means. I had no idea that socialists were in favor of sister wives and plural marriage. Well, they're probably not in favor of plural marriage. They're probably not in favor of any marriage, except marriage assigned by the state. Polymaternalism. I should be making a list of vocab words.
Example, step parents, right? Whose relationship with kids is frequently
oh yeah, it's just the same as step parents.
Sort of
It's
socially
exactly the
treated
same
as
thing.
less than, you know, because relations between, you know, adults.
Did you hear what she just said? She was like, well, she didn't say this exactly, but I'm gonna paraphrase. She's like, it's pretty much the same thing as step parents. No, because the step parent became the step parent when they married into the family. They became a member of the family. That's what it is. She's basically saying this is no the mothering figure depropertizing the family. It's no different than step parents. No, that's not true.
Adults and children are supposed to be authorial, really, you know. And if you don't, if you're a step mom, you know, don't you want a child of your own, right? Is a frequent sort of social question that arises. And so there's a lot of kind of relief and I don't know, validation that can come from having a conversation happen where, you know, not only are children active participants in relationships who perhaps, you know, in Firestone's horizon, for example, might deserve, for example, a say about where they live, with whom, and how, but also, you know, the sort of the grown-up part of that relation, you know, deserves, you know, acknowledgement outside of the sort of legitimized roles and titles of parenthood. It is certainly the case, isn't it, that like relationships between grown-ups and children are, you know, are almost prescribed, well, you know, right now, outside of the legitimizing,
do you not want that?
Yeah, containers, boxes of full parenthood, you know. Yeah, I don't know. My partner was watching for our sins an episode of Real Housewives yesterday, and there was a house. You can read Rosa Della Costa and then watch the Real Housewives of, you know, Beverly Hills, and it's a hell of a mental conundrum. But she was saying one you know, ruling class housewife that explicitly that her daughter should have contact with no other adult, that she had not, like, and this was an 18-year-old daughter, right? But there is a sanctioned ruling class view that a parent has, in some sense, you know, a right to define exactly who a child, an 18-year-old child, will be impressed by, right? Be shaped by, and this, you know, this is horrifying. You know, this is a fascistic view, right? Yeah, so
She thinks
we
okay.
have a long way to go, right? Critical childhood studies is the field I honestly think,
what?
You know, leftists, revolutionaries in general should be engaging, you know, full tilt right now.
Critical childhood studies. Okay. When she says critical childhood studies, we need to think about critical race theory, critical gender theory, critical queer theory, critical fat studies, critical disability studies. What do you think, based on our frame of reference, critical childhood studies is going to be about? Critical childhood studies. What do you guys think? And I'm asking in the chat. I'm asking for a response. If we think about critical race theory, gender theory, queer studies, trans studies, which are basically queer studies, fat studies, disability studies, what is critical childhood studies going to be about that she wants leftists to double down on? Children need power. That's right, Deborah. Because all of this is about power. Critical race theory is not really about race, it's about power. Critical queer theory is not really about queer or trans, it's about power. So yes, children need power. And the only way that we can give children power is to abolish the family structure. Bot says critical childhood studies implies being critical not only of our own research practices, but the very practices and social arrangements that we study in the real world of children and childhood. That seems like, Bot, you're quoting it from somewhere. So the very real practices when it comes to raising children. If you guys don't see this as a gateway into minor attracted persons just having normal relationships with little adults, with little humans, I don't know what to tell you, man. That's where the reason they want children emancipated from the family, liberated from the family, is so they can have control over the children. What do you think they're going to do when they get control over the children? Yeah, I knew you stole it from Googlebot. I knew where you got it.
Because of the mounting sort of mobilization, you know, of sort of explicitly proprietarian, sort of fascistic concepts of childhood right now. The assault on trans children, you know, the assault on gestational autonomy, you know, and the you know, the pedophile industrial complex, right? The organized association of, you know, queer life with abuse, child sexual abuse specifically, and grooming, and so on. And it's in critical childhood studies that we find the knowledge, the wisdom,
Wait,
the history.
I need to rewind that. I need to rewind that. I'm sorry. What did she? I'm not sure the point she was making about the pedophile industrial complex. I just need to listen to that again. Sorry.
Is the field I honestly think, you know, leftists, revolutionaries in general should be engaging, you know, full tilt right now, because of the mounting sort of mobilization, you know, of sort of explicitly proprietarian, sort of fascistic concepts of childhood right now. The assault on trans children, you know, the assault on gestational autonomy, you know, and the you know, the pedophile industrial complex, right? The organized association of, you know, queer life with abuse, child sexual abuse specifically, and grooming, and so on. And it's in critical childhood studies that we find the knowledge, the wisdom, the histories that help us bring together different kinds of abolitionism, prison abolitionism, abolishing the police, and the abolition of if you like, adulthood or childhood, or the because and that's really it's in
The
fact
abolition of
weaponization
childhood
as a concept, which is racial, right? Which cannot be de-racialized, according to people like Erica Miners, for example. You know, that we'll find our way out of this.
Childhood as a concept is racist? That's what she just said, right? Childhood as a is racialized. Hang on, I need to rewind again. Sorry, guys. So like I said earlier, like, they talk in a very confusing way, and sometimes I just need to listen to things more than once. Hang on.
Of if you like, adulthood or childhood, or the because and that's really it's in fact the weaponization of childhood as a concept, which is racial, right? Which cannot be de-racialized, according to people like Erica Miners, for
the weaponization of childhood as a concept, which is racial. So as Sin is pointing out here, if you abolish childhood, all of a sudden there are no pedophiles, there are no groomers. If we just get rid of the concept of childhood, then we get rid of the concept of grooming entirely. We get rid of the concept of pedophilia entirely. Problem solved. And she just said that doing so is a racial thing. So they're going to say, if we don't get rid of the concept of childhood, then you're a racist. Do they talk like this on purpose? Yes, they do. Wow. If you don't, oh my God. Okay. You guys are just gonna have to bear with me as I'm wrapping my head around. And please, like, we need to come up with like like an explanation for this together. If you guys think that I'm getting something wrong in my explanation of what she's saying, many of you have watched a lot of this content with me. I'm going based on what I think is correct, but if you feel like I'm wrong or you have something to add or you would say it differently, please chat that in so I can see it, because I am paying attention to the chat, at least on YouTube. Sorry, Odyssey and Rockfin, but you don't integrate with my streaming software. Like, oh my, if you abolish childhood, you abolish pedophilia and grooming. I just got sick. Does that make anyone else feel sick? Oh.
For example, you know, that we'll find our way out of this, you know, this grooming discourse impasse. You know, we have to go that deep. I don't think we're going to fix.
We'll find our way out of this grooming discourse impasse when we abolish childhood. They literally view, holy fuck. All right, guys, I need to clip this. I'm sorry. I need to clip this on the fly. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I need to do this. I know you all understand. This is like the nugget. If you abolish childhood, you get rid of the grooming argument. Holy shit. Hang on. Record.
Me, you know, and the you know, the pedophile industrial complex, right? The organized association of, you know, queer life with abuse, child sexual abuse specifically, and grooming, and so on. And it's in critical childhood studies that we find the knowledge, the wisdom, the histories that help us bring together different kinds of abolitionism.
Hang on, I'm gonna rewind a little bit more because I need to get her talking about critical childhood studies. Sorry, guys, I need to rewind a little bit more.
There's a sanctioned ruling class view that a parent has, in some sense, you know, a right to define exactly who a child, an 18-year-old child, will be impressed by, right, be shaped by, and this, you know, this is horrifying. You know, this is a fascistic view, right? Yeah, so we have a long way to go, right? Critical childhood studies is the field I honestly think, you know, leftists, revolutionaries in general should be engaging, you know, full tilt right now, because of the mounting sort of mobilization, you know, of sort of explicitly proprietarian, sort of fascistic concepts of childhood right now. The assault on trans children, you know, the assault on gestational autonomy, you know, and the you know, the pedophile industrial complex, right? The organized association of, you know, queer life with abuse, child sexual abuse specifically, and grooming, and so on. And it's in critical childhood studies that we find the knowledge, the wisdom, the histories that help us bring together different kinds of abolitionism, prison abolitionism, abolishing the police, and the abolition of if you like, adulthood or childhood, or the because and that's really, it's in fact the weaponization of childhood as a concept, which is racial, right, which cannot be deracialized, according to people like Erica Miners, for example. You know, that we'll find our way out of this, you know, this grooming discourse impasse. You know, we have to go that deep. I don't think we're going to fix it unless we, you know, joyfully acknowledge our shared humanity with people of, you know, different generations. I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, we've got Wendy and then
acknowledge our humanity with people of different generation, our share. Oh my ever loving, they really think that this is like a social justice effing mission. I swear to God. All right, I've got that clip. I will deal with that clip later. No. See, she's not defending pedos. She's not defending pedos. What she is saying is that if you abolish the concept of the family, that means you abolish the concept of childhood, you liberate the little people from the property owners who used to be called parents. And if you do all these things, then that solves the grooming and pedo problem. Because if you eliminate childhood, you eliminate pedophilia. If you eliminate childhood, you eliminate grooming. It will solve their problem of the pedo-industrial complex if they just eliminate it entirely. That is what she is saying. This is effing insane. This is one of the most insane things we've ever watched on this channel. Oh, yes. Because, oh, Sin, you're right. Holy shit. Because if there's no concept of childhood, then there is no reason for children, for little adults, because for little people, because again, they're not children anymore. They're not the property, quote unquote, of their parents anymore. They're just little people. So the issue of consent becomes completely moot because they're not considered children anymore. So that means that at any age, they can consent because there's no concept of childhood anymore. Holy hell. Holy hell. No, it's not considered genocide, Maddie, because they're just eliminating the concept of childhood. They're just saying that children are not children. They're just tiny humans that are fully capable of making their own decisions. That's what they're saying. So not genocide at all. Oh my God. Naruto says, in case you haven't heard, rest in peace, Queen Elizabeth II. I have heard. I have thoughts on it. Mostly, I know this is like way off topic from like we're going from something horrific to something that I think is you know, both sad and celebratory. Listen, man, 96 years old. She had a really good run. What an amazing life. Whether you agree with the monarchy or you don't agree with them. Oh, Facebook shut off my streaming. Oh, isn't that funny? Facebook shut off my streaming. I wonder what happened there. Whether you agree with the monarchy or whether you don't agree with the monarchy, like that, what an amazing life. Like, you know, good for her. And she's back with Philip, and you know, we'll see how Charles does. We'll see how it goes. But, you know, everything can be both good and bad. Like, I think it's sad, but I also think we all knew that it was coming. Like, she was 96 years old. You know, celebrate her life. It's probably a happy thing for her. She was probably ready. She was probably ready to go be with Philip again. TPS says, accusation is confession, Handmaid's Tale. These something Samav, I don't know what that word is. People who scream these are the same people who screamed about family separation at the border. Well, no. These are not the same. No. This is not correct. Again, I need to emphasize this. These are not the same people who screamed about family separation at the border. These are not. The people who screamed about family separation at the border were progressives. She's not a progressive. She is a socialist. And I know people like to conflate progressives and socialists, but it is not true. Socialists are the real deal. Progressives are LARPers who do things for political points. But she's the real deal. And it's very important that people understand this, because people like her are driving the talking points that progressives will be using years from now. 1, 2, 3 years from now, progressives are going to be saying this. But she is not one of the same people who was screaming about family separation at the border. Those were people trying to gain political points. She doesn't like those people. She doesn't think those people are left enough. Never confuse the people that you see on CNN or MSNBC or even AOC herself. Never confuse them with legitimate socialists, because they are not legitimate socialists. These people are. These people are as left as left as left can get. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through the chat, guys, making sure I didn't miss anything. Just when you think you've got the dystopian nightmares, like, you know, raveled up, no, they just keep getting worse and worse. All right, let's keep going.
Henry.
Thanks so much, Sophie. I really enjoyed reading your book, and also this presentation. And even though you don't talk so explicitly about psychoanalysis in the book, there were a couple of moments that stood out to me as being especially available for bringing these two discourses together, which is basically, you know, what this seminar is about. And one of them is that I've seen in psychoanalytic writing an attempt to kind of account for a sort of like pre-Oedipal guilt experienced by children in relation to their caregiving parents, in terms of kind of feeling responsible for depleting resources or putting some sort of strain on the parent, like, which might be called like guilt of being born or something like that. But it doesn't really offer like an etiology of why that guilt might exist, and sort of just places it on like the parent sort of being
progressives are socialists driving the speed limit. You're right.
Making the child feel responsible
well done.
for this exhaustion of resources. And I thought there was something really compelling in your book on page 18 when you say, "I'd wager that you two can imagine something better than the lottery that drops a neonate arbitrarily among 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 individuals of a particular class and keeps her there for the best part of 2 decades without her consent, making her wholly beholden to them for her physical survival, legal existence, and economic identity." And then this is the part that really stood out to me, "and forcing her to be the reason they give away their lives and work." And it occurred to me that this, like, having to be, as a child, the reason that your parents give away their lives and work is like a really useful way to think about what might produce in a child a certain kind of sense of guilt or responsibility that could then lead toward a certain kind of masochism that has really no kind of explanation for the conditions that produced that dynamic, for which psychoanalysis then might be one kind of solution in presenting the opportunity for a new kind of relationship to the analyst that relieves you of that sense of responsibility or guilt and recreates a more healthy dynamic. But I feel that, like, you've really, I don't know, like, given me.
Maddie, she doesn't see anything wrong with children being able to earn their own money, because she actually said earlier that that children are like the poorest population on the planet. And so I'm sure she doesn't see anything wrong with the state providing for those children. Now, what she's not telling you is the state is going to have those children working out in a field, because she's talking about a communist state, okay? So what she's envisioning in her head for how children are going to be taken care of and provided for has no relevance to capitalism at all. So you're thinking about child labor laws in terms of capitalism, in terms of children going and getting a job, going to work at an ice cream store or at a movie theater or any of those things. She's not thinking about that because, remember, these are real socialists. These are real communists, which I'm going to use interchangeably for our purposes of our stream, even though communism is much more extreme than socialism, but for our purposes, they're the same. They don't like capitalism. They want to abolish capitalism. They believe that the abolition of capitalism is required for their communist Marxist revolution. Okay? So they're not envisioning children going out and getting a job at a movie theater, because that movie theater ain't going to exist. Everything's going to be property of the state. So, you know, you need to wrap your head around that to understand how she perceives child. I'm sure she has no problem with children becoming contributors, but you got to understand that the society that she's envisioning in her head is a society in which the state owns all means of production. And those children are going to be assigned, but they're not even going to be considered children. They're going to be considered little people, but they're going to be assigned. It's not going to be like they don't go out and get a job. TPS says foster care is worse than death. Put everyone in it. Well, it's not really foster care in the way that you're thinking about it now. What these people want is to assign children to a family. They want to be in charge of which children are produced, to mean which genes are produced, because they're talking about everything via surrogacy, right? So they want to be able to control the gene pool. They want to be able to control who has a family and who doesn't have a family. And they're not going to call it a family. They're going to call it something else, maybe like the family unit, something like that. But they want to be able to control who's raising the kids. They want to be able to control what the kids do. They want to be able to control. The whole point of this is to separate children from the ownership of their parents, because she's considering that children are property of their parents and instead making them property of the state.
Something in how I can, I don't know, it really adds something. And yeah, I don't know, I guess my question would be like, what, like, how do you
hang on, it's cool. Listen, one of the very best ways to learn something is to teach it. I'm wrapping my own head around this. I'm trying to explain it in a way that I think is correct, but I'm open to people telling me I'm wrong. But I'm wrapping my head around this as well. This is the first time I've encountered any content like this. So we're learning this together. And if you guys think that I have it wrong in how I'm explaining it, please tell me.
And maybe you don't have an answer for this, and maybe this question doesn't even need to be asked, but like, how do you hope psychoanalysis might like take up some of the work that you do in this book and make it kind of integral to some of its theorizations and even therapeutic solutions or something?
Let's hear from Henrik's question as well, and then close with you, Sophie, before the break.
Thank you. Well, my question was sort of trying to riff on yours, Amy O'Brien, in that I was wondering if, when we're framing the question as a matter of abolition of a family, whether or not we're ceding ground to capitalism, so to speak, letting it dictate its terms on what gets to count as family and what gets to count as family relations. So as, and sort of ceding that ground to capitalism by saying that, well, it's that well is totally poisoned now. And also on that note, whether this makes it harder to actually see the currently existing ways of undermining or riffing on or expanding upon the family dynamics that exist currently. Because if you position it as something impossible and revolutionary and unthinkable, then it becomes much more difficult to see in what way people are engaging with it right now.
Okay, those are two huge questions. I think the second one first. No, we're not ceding ground to capitalism, in my opinion. Next week we'll be reading Kathy Weeks's, very Weeks, in typical Weeksian fashion, it's extremely systematic, much less rhizomatic in its kind of thought processes than mine, but I think she's extremely valuable, and I use it really in my book, adopt it really. She says, what is the family? She sort of has three definitions. I'll skip the first two, which she says explicitly are less important for her. The main thing is privatization of care. Okay, sorry, the other two are,
Privatization of
couple form
care.
and a biogenetic-centered concept of kinship. But the main thing is privatization of care.
Privatization of care and a genetic concept of kinship. That's what they want to get rid of, is the privatization of care. See ya, Sin. Oh my god. Guys, please mount that like button if you appreciate that I'm revealing this dystopian nightmare to you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, we got a super chat from Phil. Thank you, Phil. They talked about the destruction of the nuclear family within the African American family, using them as a beta test group before their methods are scaled up. Did you mean subtle, Phil? They talked. I don't know what settle mean, like settle. I don't know what that. I don't know what you mean by that. They talked about the destruction of the nuclear family within the African American family, using them as a beta test group before their methods are. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I agree with this. I agree with this. Looks like we're going to be watching The Giver for movie night coming up. And if people haven't read The Giver is a children's book. And it's a great children's book, actually. I really appreciate it. I actually read it in college. I took a children's literature course in college because I was having a lazy semester where I didn't do anything. And I read The Giver, and it was a great book. And then they made a movie about it. And I think you meant subtle, Phil. And the movie's not bad. It's not as good as the book, but it's not bad. But this is a straight up children's book, making it seem like this type of society is a utopian fantasy. But it turns out to be kind of nightmarish, and they're saved at the end. But yeah, it's a great book. Looks like we're gonna be watching the movie soon. Well, children, young adult. I mean, really, like, it's not like a picture book or anything. It's like young adult, I guess. Young adult, fine. Teenagers, fine.
It is not. Capitalism is eroding the family in its sort of colloquial sense, right? It atomizes. It attempts to commodify all of life, sure. But the family is its technology. The family is a technology of capitalism because it is, above all, the privatization of care.
The family is the technology of capitalism because it is the privatization of care. All right, I'm going to clip that. Hang on, please. Oh, shit. I don't know how far back I want.
The main thing is privatization of care. It is not.
Hang on. Let's go back a little bit more.
The main thing is privatization of care.
Hang on. One more time.
Mine, but I think she's extremely valuable, and I use it really in my book. Adopt it really. She says, what is the family? She sort of has three definitions. I'll skip the first two, which she says explicitly are less important for her. The main thing is privatization of care. Okay, sorry, the other two are something to do with the couple form and a biogenetic-centered concept of kinship. But the main thing is privatization of care. It is not. Capitalism is eroding the family in its sort of colloquial sense, right? It atomizes. It attempts to commodify all of life, sure. But the family is its technology. The family is a technology of capitalism because it is, above all, the privatization of care. That is also why we do not reserve a specific form of familiarity, queer, indigenous, Black, whatever, to protect, from abolition. That doesn't make any sense. That's completely backwards. It is precisely those populations, racialized, marginalized, excluded, othered from the wages of family that are best served by abolition of the family. It would be completely backwards to pretend that that those things that are, and Spiller suggests, perhaps oxymoronically sort of called, you know, the Black family, should somehow be valorized and used as a model for society at large, right? That's exactly backwards. I don't know if that's like a full response to that, but
All right. I cut the clip. Hang on one sec. She got into some word salad there at the end, but I wanted to hear what she had to say. Add to document 6. There we go. All right. That's now in there. Okay. I really want to point this out. You got, so in order to truly understand this content, you have got to pull your head out of reality and enter the land of the socialist. And as a reminder, these people are currently winning. These people are currently driving culture. These people are currently in control of the Overton window. These people are winning. Every single time you guys want to make fun of these people, and Maddie, I'm not insinuating that you're doing that. I'm just saying in general. Every time you guys want to make fun of these people, just remind yourselves, these people are winning. So it is very, very important that we wrap our heads around what this is. So when Maddie says, and again, I'm not picking on you, Maddie, it's a good example to use, so I hope you don't feel offended. I don't intend it this way. I'm pretty sure families existed before capitalism, but hey, what do I know? No. They don't think like that. They believe that the only reason that the family structure exists is to serve this privatized model. They want to undo everything privatized, undo all private property, undo all private ownership, and they believe that parents own their kids. So in their minds, no, because parents have always owned their kids in their minds. I'm not saying this is what I believe, I'm saying this is what they believe, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it as well. If parents have always had ownership over their children, then capitalism has always existed because it is the ownership model. So you know how like all those times we've talked about how like whiteness is not about our skin color, whiteness is about who owns property. Okay? Whiteness is about power. Who owns property? Who is the boss? These people, when they talk about undoing whiteness or abolishing whiteness, what they're talking about is abolishing private property ownership. That's who they consider white. Who owns property? So it's the same thing with the family. If parents have always owned their children, then capitalism has always existed because the ownership is something they want to transfer from private individuals to the state. I think I got that right. I hope I got that right. Please let me know if you guys think I got that right. Hell Radio Lives. Socialists have already started utilizing the children of people who became fad parents as test cases, those who forced their children into trends. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that that is wrong.
yeah. This is why I insist, not just on saying abolish the family, but also on a sort of linguistic, you know, beyond to the language and imaginary of kinship, right? It's like chapter 4. Oh my God, didn't I already sort of argue?
I'm gonna have to read her book,
like,
aren't I? God damn it! I'm gonna have to read this
I
goddamn
think kinship is
surrogacy
wrong
book.
Too. I mean, not wrong,
Everyone,
but insufficient for this reason, right? Because
okay, here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to do. If I can get, here's the challenge I'm gonna give you guys. I want to get to $11,000 for my crowdfunding campaign by the end of this stream. That is $155. There are any combination among the perks that will get us to $11,000. If, and only if I hit $11,000 on this crowdfunding campaign by the time we end this stream, then what I will do is I will order her book via Kindle and I will read it. And I will report back and let you guys know what she says. I will take the hit of reading this effing surrogacy book for you. It's called Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against the Family. The woman we are watching wrote this book. She also has another upcoming book called Abolish the Family. I can't get that one yet because it's only on pre-order. It comes out next month, but I can get this surrogacy one. And if you guys get me to $11,000 by the end of this stream, I will order that surrogacy book and I will read that surrogacy book and I will report back to you what that surrogacy book says. In order to get me there, you have to go to unwokearmy.com/parents. There is a link in the description below. There is a link pinned to the top of the chat. I am only taking this particular hit if you guys show me you want it and you support my crowdfunding project to train 10,000 parents how to find out what the schools are teaching, because God knows this will be taught in the schools at some, like, this is all connected, guys. So we're gonna see if everyone wants me to read that surrogacy book, and I won't be disappointed. To be really blunt, I will not be disappointed if this doesn't happen. But if you want me to read the surrogacy book, you can donate to the campaign and we can all train 10,000 parents together. And I think that that is a pretty good deal myself. I do. So we're going to find out if you guys want that too. Oh, you guys didn't even see. Oh, no. Did I even show? Was I even showing that? Oh, no. So hang on. Let me make sure that I'm showing you guys what I wanted to actually show you, which was this. I don't know if that was actually coming up on the screen. I saw it on my screen. I don't know if you guys saw it on your screen. But no, $11,000, $155 away. There could be combinations of perks that could get us there. Okay, yes, I showed it. Thank you guys. All right, let's get back to the thing. And we'll see if you guys want me to read that surrogacy book. I'm cool either way. Here's the deal. I'm not going to put myself through the suffering of reading that surrogacy book for nothing. I want donations. I want you guys to help me help me train parents. I'll do good stuff with the money, I promise. But that's the deal. I need something in return to read that fucking surrogacy book. All right, let's keep going.
You know, we can get as far together as thinking, all right, yeah, let's let's make kin with all the world, and I don't think that works. I think we need a bit more rupture in order to truly get to
There's already been $100 donation. Thank you to the $100 donation. So we now need $55. $55
for
and I will read the surrogacy book.
More than anything in this kind of constant revolution that capitalist history is, right, is some kind of notion like, you don't have any choice but to care for me, right? That's when that, you literally cannot leave me because nature has ordained you as my carer, right? That's what we want out of our mother rose. And so bioconservatives, who I've done a lot of kind of studying in my research on commercial gestational surrogacy and the sort of dystopian characters of that industry and so on, and the feminisms that oppose it on proprietarian grounds. The worst idea in the world for some feminists is the idea that children might learn. Oh my God, don't tell them, that there is some kind of contingency, some kind of choice, some kind of labor and
Thank you, Sloan, for that donation. I appreciate it.
Children must not learn that. What if they learned that babies are sometimes made, for money, or mom literally made a baby for money? No, that would be the most traumatic thing in the world. Well, obviously we're all made in a way that is contaminated.
God damn it.
By capitalist social relations.
All right. I know what motivates you guys now. Torturing me is what motivates you guys. We have now crossed. Thank you to Sloan and thank you to Peter. I think it should register here in a second. Hang on. I just got the notification. I know it's there. God dang. Well, we have actually crossed the $11,000 mark. There were $200 donations. Thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. Thank you to contributing to my torture. And I will now order that damn surrogacy book and read it and report back. Thank you. Let's see if we can get this to pop up just to show everyone. Sometimes it just takes a minute. I don't know what's going on, but we did get there. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure. Yup. It's definitely going to go. But thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. All right, let's get back to our show. Peter, you're the king of the chat. King Peter of the chat is the king again. Peter getting us to the point of torture. Peter, you just like torturing me. You do. You just like torturing me. King Peter of the chat triumphs again.
It sucks. That's why we need to de-romanticize the concepts with which we think our manufacture.
Yep, just rolled over.
You know? Yeah, mothering is not romantic. It's not. It's also quite damaging for the giver. And that's why work in the needs.
Wait, mothering is damaging to the giver? I was so focused on getting donations that I wasn't. Mothering is damaging to the giver? What? It's damaging to be a mother? Oh my god. Oh my god. See, I was about to crack a joke about like Deb Philman thinks that I'm not crowd. Deb Philman, by the way, has convinced herself that all of my donations to my campaign are fake or something, and that I didn't really crowdfund anything. So Deb Philman thinks I can't crowdfund things, but yet I'm getting people to donate by telling them I will torture myself to do it. But she just said something crazy that mothering is detrimental to the giver. Oh, thank you for the other donation that just came in. Christine, thank you for the donation. Appreciate it. And remember, guys, when you donate, you're going to get invited to movie night. You're going to get invited to movie night this week. We are watching Demolition Man on Sunday at 8 p.m. You're going to get invited to the supporter Discord. All right, let's rewind that real quick because that was nuts.
And obviously, we're all made in a way that is contaminated by, by capitalist social relations. It sucks. That's why we need to de-romanticize.
We'll see
the concepts with which we think our manufacture.
We'll see.
You know, yeah, mothering is not romantic. It's not. It's also quite damaging for the giver. And that's why anti-work needs to be thought as a maximal distribution of that labor, you know, so it doesn't kind of injure so much the party, for whom it is prescribed, you know, to give. And yeah, and then you don't get those dynamics of sort of blackmail that Wendy was talking about, like, you know, I carried you for 9 months under my I worked 18 years. I destroyed myself in wage labor for you, you know. Yeah, like, you know, it's true, isn't it? Like that is the violence of the family.
The violence of the family?
Kind of, you know, horrifying.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Really.
I wasn't going to clip this. I really wasn't, and now I have to. That's the violence of the family.
The feminisms that oppose it.
That's the violence of the family. Are you shitting me? Oh my god. Okay, clipping. Mothering is a verb and genderless. You're right about that. You're right, Shannon.
On proprietarian grounds. You know, the worst idea in the world for some feminists is the idea that children might learn. Oh my God, don't tell them. You know, that there is some kind of contingency, some kind of choice, some kind of labor and freedom involved in their care. You know, children must not learn that. What if they learned that babies are sometimes made, you know, for money, you know, or mom literally made a baby for money? No, that would be the most traumatic thing in the world. Well, you know, obviously we're all made in a way that is contaminated by, by capitalist social relations. It sucks. That's why we need to de-romanticize the concepts with which we think our manufacture, you know?
Hang on, I need to rewind that, guys. Sorry, I fucked that up on my end. Hang on, sorry.
The worst idea in the world for some feminists is the idea that children might learn. Oh my God, don't tell them. You know, that there is some kind of contingency, some kind of choice, some kind of labor and freedom involved in their care. You know, children must not learn that. What if they learned that babies are sometimes made, you know, for money, you know, or mom literally made a baby for money? No, that would be the most traumatic thing in the world. Well, you know, obviously we're all made in a way that is contaminated by, you know, by capitalist social relations. It sucks. That's why we need to de-romanticize the concepts with which we think our manufacture, you know? Yeah, mothering is not romantic. It's not. It's also quite damaging for the giver. And that's why anti-work needs to be thought as a maximal distribution of that labor, you know, so it doesn't kind of injure so much that, you know, the party, you know, for whom it is prescribed, you know, to give. And yeah, and then you don't get those dynamics of sort of blackmail that Wendy was talking about, like, you know, I carried you for 9 months under my I worked 18 years. I destroyed myself in wage labor for you, you know. Yeah, like, you know, it's true, isn't it? Like that is the violence of the family. That kind of you know, horrifying relation is sort of placed between people when there's no need, there's no reason for that. And then the production of surplus value. And in the past, people, you know, wanted to think about well, so and in the present, of course, you know, kitchenless cities, right? Cities where, you know, children and women, according to some of these utopian urban planning feminists, would be liberated in a significant way because of the sort of removal from our psychical and architectural landscapes of the private kitchen. You know, if you anticipate that your, you know, the body and soul will be kept together, obviously, you know, it goes without saying that you will receive food in the public, in the common sphere, right? Then a large component of the sort of technology of you know, of individualization via patriarchal motherhood is removed, and we have more freedom to meet one another as potentially comrades, right? Including kind of like mothers and children, you know. I don't know if that makes sense. Wendy, it's really...
Oh, that does not make sense. That does not make sense at all. Holy shit. She just said that when we abolish these family ties, oh my god. I was about ready to stop the clip because I was like, she's not saying enough crazy stuff, it's all gibberish again. And then she was like, this allows us to meet each other as comrades. I'm like, oh my god. This woman is insane. Guys, this was recorded 10 days ago. This is not old. Okay, I have a question. Who is appreciating the socialist content that I've been showing you guys? Because I feel like this content, like, we thought that the critical race theory content and the woke content was crazy, like the stuff that's in like the mainstream media. This stuff is next level insane. This was recorded 10 days ago. All I'm saying is that we might be watching more socialist content on this channel. That might be one of the directions that I'm taking the channel in, just because, like, I do feel like this is a preview for where they want to take things. And it's insane. It's like looking into another universe. Okay, you guys are appreciating the socialist content. All right. It's going to be, every day is going to be socialist day. We were just going to do socialism Saturday, and now it's turning into like every day is socialism day. Oh my god. All right, guys, mount that like button for me. Please subscribe to the channel if you plan on tuning in for more socialism content. I promise I'll make it somewhat bearable by being just as horrified as you are.
It's really hard for me to think clearly about how psychoanalysis should adopt all this. I suppose, I don't know, I suppose some really obvious things that you already kind of gestured towards might be like around, I don't know, sort of simply making space for the pain of you know, of hating work around care,
she doesn't want to be a mother. This is where all this is coming from. She doesn't want to be a mother. She probably hates her mother, probably has a horrible relationship with her mother.
Your job when your job is to care. that should shift. You know, we shouldn't be ashamed.
Can't believe you guys are gonna make me read that book.
It's not our fault. Yeah, too much is being asked of too few.
Let's do a 5-minute break, and when we get back, I think Wendy's question of what
good. We're
to
opening
make
up to
of
questions
this
from the larger group.
psychoanalytically is a good question for all of us to consider, and that we can perhaps open that up as a collective discussion a bit, as well as making room for Catherine's critique here in the chat and other things that come up. So let's take a 5-minute break and then come back together.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Elsie says, I love watching these videos and having Carla explain things. No one else I follow is dedicated to exposing what's going on in the schools. Thank you, Elsie. I do really appreciate that. I'm really working hard, guys. So we're going to be getting back to, while they're on a break, let me tell you about some of my plans. I can fast forward, but let me tell you about, let's all have a brief intermission here. We've all been through an hour, well, 2 hours now of Crazy Town. Let me tell you about some plans I have. So we're going to be continuing with the Disenraged series that I have. I'm going to be bringing you non-political, non-insane content about life and experiences in life. I'm thinking about doing a video later today about my thoughts about the Queen's death, and I think how we should view death in general, because I do think it's like a two sides of the same, like there are two different sides of this to look at. And I do want to do that type of content because I think sometimes we need respites, we need reprieves. We can't watch crazy shit all the time. It's going to make us crazy. This is why so many activists lose their minds. When I got deep into this stuff, I lost my damn mind. When I started to come out of it and started taking breaks, I regained some of my sanity. Oh, we're back. Hang on.
So
hang on. I'm not done talking yet. Okay, Socialist, you wait your turn. So we're going to be continuing with the Disenraged series. I'm going to be restarting my West Wing podcast that I started doing and then just got sidetracked with nonsense on the internet. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing the Actively Unwoke podcast on my second channel. We're going to be doing Happy Hour on my second channel. And, you know, just for fun, for kicks, we're going to be doing socialist content and like really, really wacky stuff. So those are some of the plans that I have that I'm thinking about. But don't think it's going to be all wacky stuff all the time. I'm going to do non-political, non-uber crazy content too, because sometimes we need palate cleansers. And so I'm going to have a good variety on this channel. Please make sure you are subscribed to my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke. We do happy hours there on Fridays. We're going to have to do it a little bit earlier tomorrow because I got someplace I need to be at 5 o'clock. Normally it's 5 o'clock, but we're going to do it a little earlier tomorrow. And then I do my Actively Unwoke podcast on my second channel as well. And depending on my time, we're also going to be doing the Schools Exposed investigative streams on this channel. That's another thing. So we're going to be doing like Unwoke Army stuff on this channel, spy stream stuff on this channel. So you're going to get a good variety. That's what you're subscribing for. And yeah. And yes, Steven, I am waiting for every conservative that has ever dragged me on Twitter to go, I knew she was a leftist all along. Look, she's watching all this socialist content on her channel. She was always a leftist. I'm sure that's going to happen. I don't really care. This stuff is crazy. This is like watching a movie, like a dystopian movie, except it's real. All right, guys, let's get
Emmy's connect was dropped, so I'm just gonna moderate conversation until she's able to return. If you have any questions, definitely raise your hands. Otherwise, we can go into the chat. I don't know if Catherine and Sophie wanted to pick up this conversation you were having, but also anyone else who has questions, feel free to raise your hand. Yeah.
Hi. Something in your book, Sophie, really caught my eye. It's a moment where you talk about the abolition of slavery and the connection you make between abolition and like Aufhebung and like you say this really interesting stuff about like how this is a moment where humanism is abolished, but also maybe sort of fulfilled. Its true promise is, you know, made clear for the first time when we can acknowledge that like the previous definitions of humanism are absurd in their limitations. And what struck me about this was that there seemed to be a little slip from the abolition of slavery to the abolition of humanism. And what I wanted to think about was the way that I think if we just think about the abolition of slavery in the same terms, and we think about the abolition of slavery as a moment where maybe superficially slavery is gone, but in fact, we're just beginning to explore the true potentials of slavery and all these different ways that we can extend the institution of slavery.
They're equating hang on.
Establish new.
What he's doing is he's equating parenthood to slavery. He's saying that children are slaves to their parents.
Kinds of caste systems and new kinds of laws and this kind of like backlash. I mean, I don't want to do like a whole summarizing of New Jim Crow, but I guess given this kind of reading of slavery abolition is like not really the end of slavery, I wonder how we might think through the potential for family to kind of sneak back in through the back door after its abolition in the context of a kind of insurrectionary communal kitchen type situation. Like how can we think about the potential for the form of the family to continually reemerge, even in better contexts that we might hope to create? And I don't have much to say about this necessarily, but it occurs to me that maybe psychoanalysis can help us think through how this particular type of relation might continually emerge, even in the best of circumstances. So that's something I was thinking about.
Yeah.
So, do you want us to take more questions, or do you want to? Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
I was
go.
especially because that just like seemed like the question, and I think it's a great comment in a way.
Okay, great. So let's take other Alex's question, and then
Okay. I also wanted to get to Catherine's comment at some point as well, or the exchanges that you were having in the chat. But I'm just trying to think about. I mean, I think it's a huge question that has been posed, and it is the question of the seminars, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I think what's interesting about the psychoanalytic situation with patients is that. So if just for a second, if it can be possibly bracketed, just forget the material antagonism of the family for a second. Psychically, it's really hard to get patients and people, you might have experienced this yourself if you're in analysis, to talk about the psychical antagonisms in your childhood, infantile complexes, neuroses, difficulties, they're all kind of screened off from you. It takes a lot of it takes time and patience and talking about it a lot to even return to the kind of nuclear complex at the heart of your early years. And in a way that there's a defensive fantasy against recognizing, right, the constitutive antagonisms that make up who you are. And then in a kind of a parallel way, the material critique of the private economic household and the family unit also gets kind of screened off. Like Henrik's question is an interesting one because it's like, there's a kind of belief, I think, that there's a utopian element of being a child. You're not explicitly like waging for labor. You're an unwaged worker, and that's an exploitation. But in a way, you're relieved of those duties. In a way, you have a dependency on adults, but that relieves you of the responsibility of being an adult. So there's this kind of contradiction or this antagonism of like a wish to be a child unencumbered by material antagonisms and unencumbered by the psychical affliction of hating your family or hating your parents or whatever. So I think in a way there's like that, the critique of the family form and then the psychoanalytic process of uncovering the kind of unconscious antagonisms of your life in your interpersonal dynamics and the transference work in conjunction with one another. But that's entirely speculative, so I don't know exactly how it works. But the more and more I'm thinking about this question about how what psychoanalysis can learn from family abolition, both clinically and I think in terms of social critique, I'm led more and more again to the question of like, okay, well, how did the constitutive fantasies of the family form and of being a child and of being a parent resist the critique itself of the economic private household? You know, and because there's a sense that you give up something in that. There's a kind of subjective destitution to lose the family, because indeed that's the crucible of who you are. And so I think, and then Alex's question about the kind of unconscious, the persistence of unconscious formations, even after they've been abolished, whatever we might mean by that, right? I mean, because there's a sense, I think, that I think sometimes we slip into this belief that there's just an event, and then after the event, things are communized and we're in a different set of material relations. And that might very well be true, and I'm not going to hold out against that possibility. But nevertheless, if Freud is correct, and it's a huge if, that unconscious formations, historical unconscious formations persist in the psyche, regardless of the historical present, there's a kind of conundrum there that I think Alex might be speaking to, which is that, you know, those antagonisms, those forms of transference relationships of the capitalist family might persist in some kind of, you know, hobbled form of sorts. Sorry, that was my computer. But anyways, that's a lot of comments, and I just wanted to just get things on the table, I suppose, more than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are both fantastic comments, or series of comments. What is best for me to do right now, Wendy? Should we also acknowledge the conversation in the chat going on, or I mean, we could also hear more comments. I think that would be really great.
Yeah, maybe we'll take we'll take Patrick's and Molly's comments, and then we can also just kind of fold the conversation in the comments into your response if you feel like that's not too much to put on you at once. Does that work? Okay. Patrick, yeah.
Oh, they all have dead eyes.
I'm also delivering this question on behalf of Abby, who is in another state but has audio interference there. So she's I'm trying to like vocalize this, but I may be doing it violence. I was thinking.
Wait,
so this piggyback.
Did you hear what he just said? He's asking a question for someone else, and he says, "I'm trying to vocalize this, but I might be doing it violence." These people are so crazy.
Nicely on sort of Alex's question, right? I'm just thinking of.
By the way, point of personal privilege for the equally crazy woman on Twitter who's posting things saying that I can't work. What do you think this is right now, Tina? What do you think I'm doing right now? You can go whine to Deb about how much I can't work when I raised over 3 times what Deb Philman raised in a month in a matter of days. Can't work. My God. My haters on Twitter are almost as stupid as these people right here. Almost as stupid as these people right here. And yes, Tina, you're looking at a screenshot because I don't actually look at your stuff all day. People send me your stuff because they watch you like the crazy person that you are, just like these people right here. My God. All right, let's keep going. Sorry, guys.
And I don't really know where to go with this, but I just wanted to put something on the table, like the psychoanalytic vocabulary of like attachment, right? And its sort of history via Bowlby, but also
I'm not on Twitter right now. That was a screenshot that someone sent me.
So in many cases, like become psychoanalysts because they're in non-Western contexts and they have to do childcare and they observe how people around them are doing childcare, et cetera. And it's sort of, you know, without necessarily being biological, does kind of give a term, not quantize, like it reifies this idea of, well, what's the bond between caregivers in a way that's not necessarily edible, right? What's this containing environment that a child needs? And I was just thinking about like attachment as a concept against the as like a psychoanalytic rejoinder or a revised psychoanalytic way of thinking about ties within not like the nuclear family per se, but in terms of just like the rearing environment more broadly, and whether that's one sort of vector forward on this. That's just what I wanted to put out there, and hopefully, Abby, that paraphrases what you wanted me to ask.
Shout
Yeah,
out
go
to
ahead, Molly, and
self-inflicted
then
Lyme
we'll go
disease.
back to
Shout
Sophie.
out to self-inflicting Lyme disease on yourself by
Thank you so
making
much.
it a
It's
part of
given
your
me
identity.
lots and lots to think
Oh, look at
about.
this woman. Oh,
Um,
what is going on here?
What is, what's sort of striking
She
me as
looks like
well,
a
though,
socialist,
I guess
doesn't
it's
it?
a little bit
Oh,
like
wow.
what Henrik was saying, is that in this sort of discourse of
Socialist
abolishing the family,
vibes.
your focus seems to be a lot on the caregiving as work and the privatization of care. I think from a psychoanalytic
Does she have any
point of
teeth?
view, the emphasis falls more on the child's helplessness, almost as a hostage in a setup situation.
Oh, she has teeth. Okay.
So I'm just wondering what you would say to that the child in a way can be the proletariat in this setup.
The child
there's,
is the
We also have the
proletariat.
complexity of step parenting, fathers who are full-time parenting, all these sorts of elements, the complexity of sibling relationships, which can
This is
become
work camp
sites
vibe.
of oppression.
This is what
or
we all have
sites
to
of
look forward to.
suffering.
No offense, she seems like a very nice lady.
All these things seem to me to demand a more, just a sense of the battlefield. It's a little bit like what Tolstoy says, every unhappy family is unhappy in its own singular way. So I just wonder what you thought about that. Thank you.
Yeah, so Sophie, take it away.
It's really interesting that Tolstoy quote is one that I used to jump off in an essay about horror cinema and family, but actually
it's so important, I think. Yeah.
Yes, I don't know if you're familiar. In fact, Ursula K. Le Guin argues that.
So I need to explain something about how socialists do Q&A. We learned this over the weekend. I don't know why they do it this way. It's really weird. Christine asks, wait, why are they not answering any questions or acknowledging any of these comments? What socialists do at their conferences, and apparently here too, I thought that was just a socialist conference thing, but apparently we're seeing it here, is they have several people ask questions or make comments, and then at some point, they respond to several things at once. I don't know why they do it this way. If anyone has any insight into why this is something I only see at socialist presentations, but they'll like take multiple comments or multiple questions and they won't respond to them, and then they'll do a whole long list of responses. I don't really understand it.
It's exactly wrong. That it is the production of happiness that is the more complex
production of happiness. Happiness can't be produced. It is a state of being.
Sort of fleeting, sort of material phenomenon that, in fact, every unhappy family is unhappy in exactly the same way for the same reasons, and that every happy family is fleetingly but extremely interestingly happy for reasons that we should almost like anthropologically and historically.
Maybe they're both. I think they're both real. I don't think it's a fiction that there's a singularity to family unhappiness.
Deborah might be right.
I see that point too.
Deborah's making an interesting point. They might do that to erase the individuality of the specific questioner. You're right. It's like, has anyone seen the Battleship Potemkin? Okay, I had to watch this movie in college and I hated it because the Battleship Potemkin is basically, it's like a Russian revolution. It's glorifying the Russian Revolution. It was made in like the 1920s or something. And it's basically when a battleship named Potemkin is overtaken by the proletariat. I believe. I haven't seen this movie in like 20 years, but I hated this movie because there were no characters in this movie. It was the mob itself was the character. And so you didn't actually get to know anyone in the movie as an individual because the mob that took over the battleship Potemkin was the character. They were trying to de-individualize everyone, and the mob, the group, the collective became the thing. So this could very well be, if they're trying to erase all individuality because that's what they need to do in order to create their communist society, then that makes sense to me. I think that might be the correct answer.
I think her essay is really worth looking at in terms of how she proposes, perhaps with relevance to psychoanalytic inquiry, that in general, happiness has stood as a less interesting subject than as a lesser, almost feminized subject for analysis than unhappiness. So yeah, no, you're right. I'm just gonna, I don't know if I'll be able to work backwards and remember everything, but Molly, the question of the sort of work component of care, yeah, and you were saying the focus on the helplessness of the child would be more of an important thing to center if we were doing this psychoanalytically. I think both is important. It's very upsetting, I think, when we encounter the social factory thesis of the long 60s, of the wages against housework kind of perspective, you know, to fully internalize this really difficult you know, fact that mothering is work, and you know, work is violence. I think the problem that comes up in the
motherhood is work and work is violence. Have you guys heard about this quiet quitting thing that's going on in offices now? Where people are just like not doing their jobs, but they're not quitting. They're just doing the bare minimum to get by, which, to be quite frank, not actually the worst idea in the world, because a lot of workplaces really take advantage of people, and they take advantage of your proclivity to want to do better, and then they don't even notice or acknowledge or say thank you when you go above and beyond. So I'm not, but the whole like anti-work thing with people quitting their jobs or not doing their jobs, that's because they believe work is violence. All right, I think I gotta clip this. Hang on, let me go back a little bit. Hang on, clip. Work is violent. Motherhood is violence because it's work.
An important thing to center if we were doing this psychoanalytically. I think both is important. It's very upsetting, I think, when we encounter the social factory thesis of the long 60s, of the wages against housework kind of perspective, you know, to fully internalize this really difficult you know, fact that mothering is work, and you know, work is violence. I think the problem that comes up in these conversations is the idea that someone is saying it's just and only work, right? I don't read that in this analysis. I think it's important to try and not hear that, and that precisely the problem is the degree to which the activities that are, in a sense, the most important ones on earth, I think I feel sort of happy saying that in a way, are being stolen and turned into work. Not totalizing, but, you know, just to bring up the old Silvia Federici quote, you know, nothing so effectively stifles our lives as the transformation into work of those activities that satisfy our desires, right? We should be angry at the extent to which those things that we would like to be doing, spending time with children, being, you know, perhaps held and cared for in turn by children, right? You know, being made, the process of sort of making and being made, you know, is stolen and turned into work. And that's, you know, but I think being willing to think about that complexity, that duality, you know, I think makes it easier to tolerate this very unpleasant sort of charge that, stuff that, in a sense a lot of people do happily as being called work and as being, subject to abolitionist, assaults. Yeah.
She just said, did you guys catch that? She said that sometimes people might like to be around children and care for children, and that's why we should decouple it from work, because if you're a mother instead of mothering, if you're a mother, then you're forced to be around children, but you might not want to be around children, and work is violence. So forcing people to be mothers when they don't want to do work is violence against them. But sometimes you want to be around children, and sometimes, and this is the part where I really gotta put a face on. She said, sometimes you just want to be held and be cared for by children. Did anyone else catch that? Here, I'll play it again.
To be doing, spending time with children, being, perhaps held and cared for in turn, in turn by children, being made. The process of sort of making and being.
Do any of you want to be held and cared for by children? Does anyone want that? Is that on anyone's list? I'm just saying. And you notice she almost didn't even say it. She kind of choked it out. She almost didn't even say it.
Made, is stolen and turned into work, and that's but I think being willing to think about that complexity, that duality, I think makes it easier to tolerate this very unpleasant sort of charge that in a sense a lot of people do happily as being called work and as being subject to abolitionist assaults. Yeah, God, my memory. So
there's Pat's question about attachment, and then also maybe up to you if you want to pick up the conversation in the chat as well about
could I get the one sentence reformulation of the attachment question? I'm very sorry. Is that possible? Restate the question.
I was just wondering, or Abby, I was wondering on behalf of Abby whether like attachment offers a certain vocabulary for thinking about like the insistence of ties and it not necessarily reducible to biology, but that might be a factor for thinking about the plasticity of family. Thanks.
Sorry. Yes. Right. Of course. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure. And maybe that's maybe then we need to also think about like what it is that makes some kind of concept of my people, having people, a problem. What are the conditions that render that potentially nationalistic? And you're right. And I think that's I don't know entirely the answer, but I liked the analysis of the authors of the CARE manifesto that insisted on that link between family attachment and nationalism. Right, this was a core point of the 60s family abolitionists too, that you need that the nation is the family is a microcosm of the nation, and that our structures of thought are trained into this competitive model, this sort of, which also is determined by by the need to survive. We provide for ours, and we keep out others, and and we compete against neighbors, and I was also, for my sins, I listened to Nina Power's Opinions on Compact podcast recently, and she was specifically talking about how the problem with gender relations right now is the fact that men and women are turning into siblings with competitive relations vis-a-vis one another, when I suppose in a golden past they were, you know, heterosexually differentiated and allocated to different spheres, allowing a, you know, a harmonious, production of and reproduction of the whole. I don't know. I totally disagree that there's something kind of inherent about the like sibling. We'll be talking about that later in the seminar, won't we, with Hannah, which I'm really looking forward to. But this naturalization of the idea that that, for example, different children in a household might be in competition with another necessarily, seems to me, to be lacking that material analysis that Wendy, you were talking about, is missing when we talk about the blame and resentment we feel towards one another, when we've been sort of compelled to be disproportionately responsible for the labor of anthrogenesis, as I call it. What else is there to say now? So Alex and then other Alex. I thought those were fantastic comments. I mean, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the chat with them. I don't know if you feel comfortable, Catherine, unmuting, but I think I'd love that to be brought into the YouTube archive, as it were, because it seems really central. But basically, if you're not comfortable unmuting, I suppose I can say that we're talking about the ins and outs of describing, as I understand it, sort of colonized forms of kinship and pre-colonial forms of kinship as families, and what I suppose I could read out if you prefer, or Emmy, what do you think?
I mean, let me use the reference that we've been talking about as a group in other conversations. I'm thinking about Fred Moten's consent to be more than a singular being. And obviously, he's not talking for all sort of non-Western forms of family, but I feel like that's a really good starting point. There is a mode of being, and he's also very focused on, in some ways, on biology or on the material, the fact that we are in many ways human animals. But there's a way of inhabiting the body that is not singular, that does not emphasize either an identity or even, for that matter, a subject, that doesn't sort itself into personhood. And that mode of being in one's own body enables one to be with the bodies of others, including the bodies that both issue from yourself and sort of enter your sphere of self, that I think really sidesteps the notion of me and my and private property, but at the same time, like, provides stable and consistent basis of care. And I think other cultures have in very, very different ways worked out modes of creating those social relations. And I think it's worth learning from those social relations. So that's my first point. That, I mean, as a kind of anthropological point, that there are other cultures that have worked out alternative forms to the private nuclear family that does not simply abolish the family. That's what family looks like in their culture, or at least it can look like. And it's worth learning from those. And the second point, and I say this as someone who grew up in communist China, family abolition has been done before in communist China and in other places. And in many places, the results are not just horrific. I mean, members of my family were set on fire by
let's see how she answers
including
this.
in Bali. The generation
Love
of
this.
continues. I'm several generations out from it, and it's to me incredibly obvious. But these are cultures that did not begin with a Western notion of individual self. The very sense of what it means to be a person in that culture, to use that term very loosely, is already sort of communal. And this is before the communist revolution, which in some ways worked and in other ways didn't. But I mean, my point is that, like, there are other structures of belonging that does not simply rarefy the me and mine, that does not sort of fit into a framework of what for me is like a colonized notion of the self and of the family in its turn. And attempts to abolish families have historically, I mean, frankly, just fragmented and severed and done terrible violence to those alternative notions of family. And in turn, what sort of growth in its stead is a kind of cling onto the nuclear private family instead. So I worry that family abolition, especially when it doesn't A, look at other frameworks, and B, really, really grapple with its history, including the violence and like experiments gone terribly wrong, that it often kind of brackets and say, that's not what we're doing. But yeah, but like, I don't think they intended to do that either. How did they end up doing that? Like, how do you actually learn from that history rather than disavow it? So that's what I'm
Great question. Great question, Catherine. Catherine, the hero of the day.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for giving voice to that. I think maybe Emmy wants to respond, so we'll go there.
Wait, why isn't Sophie responding? No, I want Sophie to respond.
Your critiques and your questions, Catherine, and raising the history of the Cultural Revolution in China. And there's so much to talk about here. And I think it's important that your trauma and your family's trauma be taken seriously here. I want to speak to another dimension of your comments. You referenced the Indian boarding schools of Canada and the United States. And I've been reading a lot about them for my own writing about family.
They're running interference.
And the boarding schools
They're running
were
interference
set up, by mostly the Catholic Church and later with a lot of state support, out of a really deliberate program of trying to figure out how to impose family relations onto Indigenous people. That there was a lot of concern with the settler nations that Indigenous people in North America didn't organize property relations based on the patriarchal family, based on the private family. And the level of cooperative, cross-familial property relations made it very difficult to figure out how to interface in capitalist property relations. And this is one of a number of elements of the settler state that really geared towards the genocide of Indigenous people. And that genocide both was focused on exterminating Indigenous people, but also figuring out how to force Indigenous people to adopt white cultural practices and white property practices. And the boarding schools did both. They were putting children into these environments where they died in extremely high numbers. They were brutally beaten. They were tortured for practicing Indigenous spirituality. They were tortured.
What does this have to do with the question?
Like, so a real kind of exterminationist element, but they were also adopted out to white families. And late in the boarding school process, allotment became a major part of the gears of genocide. And allotment was
what does this have to do with the question?
Reservation land to patriarchal nuclear, or not nuclear, but patriarchal family units of Indigenous people. And so dividing up the reservation land into family plots. And that was really explicitly designed both to ultimately take away a lot of property and to transition Indigenous people into family-based capitalist property relations. And so that sort of the family in this context is the imposition of the settler white family was concurrent and part of the same project as the development of the Indian boarding schools.
I want to just note, so first off, this person, and I don't know what pronouns this person uses, so I'm not even going to venture into the misgendering territory. I don't know what they use. So this person is talking about that has completely obfuscated this person's question, by the way, and I really hope the author has the stones to come in and answer the damn question that was asked, which was about the communist revolution in China. It was not about India. It was not about Indigenous people. It was about the communist revolution trying to do this shit in China and it not working out. So they've tried to completely like run interference so that the author of the book doesn't have to defend her work against someone who actually knows what Maoist China looks like. But I also want to point out that they're talking about whiteness and they're talking about property. So the reason that this person, they keep bringing up whiteness is because they view whiteness as the owner of the property. So when they're saying that they were trying to transition Indigenous people into whiteness and these capitalist structures, they view capitalism and whiteness as the same thing. And they're equating it to this because, again, they view in our current system, with the family intact, they view it as a parent ownership over the children. So the children is private property, and that's what they want to deprivatize, which they've said earlier in this. So they want to deprivatize the family because ownership implies capitalism, and capitalism is whiteness. And that's why whiteness is bad. It has nothing to do with your skin color. It has to do with ownership and private property. I just want to make sure that's clear for people who heard a whole bunch of gobbledygook and a couple keywords and didn't really understand what they were saying.
As an instrument of genocide. And that I think in talking about family abolition, we're trying to imagine overcoming both sides of that dialectic. On the one hand, the family as a white institution of private property, and on the other hand,
white institution of private property. Decimation. Do you hear that? The family is a white institution of private property. I just want to rewind that section. That is the best summary of someone describing whiteness that I've ever heard. The family is the white institution of private property. White has nothing to do with skin color. It has to do with who owns the property. So I want to rewind that. I'm going to clip it real quick. It's just a really short one. And we're getting our clipping clip out.
The imposition of the settler white family was concurrent and part of the same project as the development of the Indian boarding schools as an instrument of genocide. And that I think in talking about family abolition, we're trying to imagine overcoming both sides of that dialectic. On the one hand, the family as a white institution of private property, and on the other hand, the genocidal violent decimation of other kinds of kinship relations.
Whiteness is the institution of private property. Jesus Christ.
And that, in the history of settler colonialism, calling this family was really integral to the Christian, white supremacist, capitalist ideological project at play. So I think I don't know to what extent that's helpful, but I think that, sort of looking at these histories of assaults on kinship, they were often done in the name of the family, in the project of the family, and part of the strategy of imposing the private family.
But I wonder if we repeat that violence when we say family abolition, a word that, and we sort of make it as a universal claim. And rather than really ask what
Catherine's not taking this nonsense
have been done before.
Catherine's like, you're not obfuscating my question.
Worked. And it's really not just
I came out of Maoist China, mother effer. You're not advocating like deflecting off my question.
A term that I think escapes the conversation. What modes of embodiment? What ways of inhabiting the body and the milieu around the body? I think it's actually worth learning from that, and sort of maybe, for me, it would, the way forward would be to sort of, there's no doubt to me, like the nuclear, private, Western, and to be blunt, white notion of family is a disaster, but rather than trying to sort of abolish that and start over, which that's been done before, why not see what other models of being are out there? And how are there ways that we can actually learn from that? And can we start that learning not from an idea or an abstraction or theory, but from what habits of embodiment do they ask us to make in ourselves, in our lives, and frankly, in our families, or whatever social or kinship or non-kinship based spheres that we start with? Because I think unless we can actually practice that, we have no fucking clue how these models of self and family work outside of our culture. I'm, as someone who has always grown up within two cultures, what is really obvious to me is that cultures do not understand each other unless you have inhabited their practices well enough to understand it from the inside. And that takes years or decades to get to that. And I think it's worth putting forth that time in like the disastrous ruin of what a white Western nuclear family has become and has done to the planet.
I very much appreciate what you're saying, Catherine, about how the resistance to the imposition of family and of proprietarian kinship on populations,
Proprietarian kinship,
sparking and catalyzing a politics of family in retaliation and in and as a means of survival. Right. This is also what I'm saying. You know, while I completely disagree that abolition of the family has been done before historically, I think in many ways we're coming from the same place, and I think sharing, you know, materially overwhelmingly the same concerns. It doesn't seem helpful to me, as I argue, you know, in the book, to call practices like, you know, family separation at the border of settler colonies, you know, family abolition. It's sort of the opposite, right? I try and make the argument that it is yes, exactly, definitionally sort of racial, definitionally bourgeois sort of technology of the family as a social order that leads to these practices in the first place, right?
So I just want to point out,
and so
she keeps saying like the family as technology. Who else uses that language? The technology, the family as technology. Who else uses on a very frequent basis the term technology to basically describe a philosophy or a perspective? Does anyone have any ideas? The family as technology. What is that? What other group does that remind you of? Does anyone have any ideas? I'm just going to pause and wait for a second. I want to see what you guys have to say. I want to know if anyone gets it. When she says the family as technology, what other group says technology when they're, oh, Scientologists! Yes, Scientologists. Scientologists do this. Scientologists do this all the time. They say L. Ron Hubbard's technology. L. Ron Hubbard's technology, Scientology, exactly. They're the only other group that I've heard do this. That's not to say there aren't others. I don't know. Yep, Deborah got Scientology as well. Yep, Scientology. Well done.
So, I mean, I suppose
I know what you meant, dude.
Maybe you're saying that, you know, abolition is an overly abstract or academic sort of formula, this sort of Aufhebung mechanism of simultaneous, you know, destruction, preservation, and transformation that we're talking about, and which I argue is, you know, and this is something I think I disagree with slightly some other family abolition comrades with, because I do think it is the same basic horizon and imaginary as with something like prison abolition. Point being, you know, that there is something that we are, you know, across populations gaining from a sort of conceptual, you know,
I like growing up in Scientology. He does a good job.
Context of, you know, the criminal justice system, the you know, the travesty at the core of it is about justice, right? About accountability. The existing, you know, what is delivered by that thing in the present is a travesty. It's the opposite, right? But by understanding what keeps our attachment to it, we become capable of not simply imagining abolition as Ruthie Wilson Gilmore says, you know, deleting and taking away, but on the contrary, shifting our attention away from the supposed subject, right? In this case, you know, the literal prisons, but the world which makes them thinkable, and the world which makes it possible to feel that we need them. And it's the same for me with family. You know, it's not at all about like starting inside the you know, the house and the relationships in there necessarily. Of course, that needs to be spoken about too in the process of you know, revolutionary sort of abolition of the self. But for me, family abolition is, and I think it has been mostly for, you know, throughout the history of this horizon, a question of building the world in which we might not need the family, in which we would not need the family. And that's it, right? And which makes it a pretty sort of, in a sense, you know, practically mundane sort of thing, you know, like universal free healthcare, shelter, provision of food, you know, provision of space, provision of, you know, it's you know, that's what it is, you know. So yeah, I don't know if other people have further sort of ideas about how this. Oh, I see there's something in the chat from Alex. But
yeah, I think also we'll distribute the chat since there's a lot of responses as you're speaking that are coming in. So yeah.
Socialist women never wear makeup. This is another thing I've noticed. They never wear makeup. They always look like they're in 1984. They always wear drab clothes.
I mean,
She's one of the most, the woman with red hair is one of the most
continuing
colorful
this thread,
socialists I've ever seen.
But maybe there are a couple other questions. Do you feel like you have the bandwidth to respond to a few others? Sophie? Yeah? Okay. So there was a question earlier from Josha. Do you want to ask?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, it's a question to everyone, really. Thank you so much for the seminar and all your writing. It's been a great inspiration. I work in education. Something that struck me in the context of this seminar was the quote by Donna Haraway in the 4th chapter, where she says, "It's time to theorize an unfamiliar unconscious, a different primal scene, where everything does not stem from the dramas of identity and reproduction." And I was just wondering what people here who know more about this than me had to say. Any ideas, sort of, what could that be? We briefly mentioned attachment, but I think there are certainly some political critiques of that model as well. Yeah, and I was just wondering if anyone had any exploratory thoughts on what that scene might be.
Can I try to respond to that one? I mean, I mean, I think, like, I like the idea of the primal scene in the psychoanalytic vocabulary, because for Freud, very straightforwardly, the family, the pre-capitalist mythical family is the primal scene. Right? So you have this father complex and this mother complex, and you have this nuclear complex that is a psychical formation that is like somehow quasi-transcendent of any given historical or social formation of the family. And so you would be forgiven for thinking just outright, okay, well, then Freud just reifies the Western bourgeois family, and that's the end of the story, and we can move on. But there's something kind of on the other side of that, when you think about it long enough, I think, which is that as a primal scene, it's something that it's a way of rationalizing, or not necessarily rationalizing, but Freud's myth of the family is a way that is an entity or a way of giving intelligibility to your life and to your earliest affective and interpersonal relations, that gets at not the positive form of the family, not the family as it ought to exist eternally, but of the conflicts that we know as Oedipal in the psychoanalytic vocabulary that make
I hate Freud so much.
Difficulties of forming attachments, right? That you beseech your father to tell you who you are.
Freud was nuts.
Beseech your mother to give you nourishment and care. Like
the occasional good observation. I'm not saying it's all trash.
Dynamics make up the unconscious primal scene, or the structure of what it means to be in a familial relationship. And
Freud was working through a lot of issues, a lot of mommy and daddy issues. That's what was going on with Freud.
Material relations are communized, that a new primal scene might be set out. And it could very well be the case that we could historicize Freud to be mostly about capitalist family relations, you know, taken to the scale or the pitch of a myth, right? But, you know, of course, Levi-Strauss's whole thing about myths and kinship structures and all this kind of stuff is that myths can.
TPS says Freud was a fraud who thought survivors of the thing were lying. Yeah, Freud had I've never been a Freud psycho. I've always been a Jungian psycho. I like Jung. Freud, again, like, broken clocks right twice a day. I'm not saying he got everything wrong, but I think he got a lot wrong. And I think people like this are crazy and then bastardize some things that he said to their own greatest use. That's all I'm saying. And Deborah had a good point too. Freud's model has not been supported by any empirical research. It is a worldview, but not something that is testable. Exactly.
Conceal material antagonisms. They resolve them in a kind of super ordinate way that gives you a narrative about what the family is, for instance, or what a society is, or what culture is, or how to resolve the difference between nature and culture, you know, interiority and exteriority. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, we might have new myths. It's possible to have new myths. Like, it's not impossible that we would have new myths around familial care in a communized material situation. And so, but in that way, it would mean a new primal scene. And in that way, it would mean a new kind of unconscious. Now, again, the novelty of that remains to be seen. But I think, I mean, it's not impossible to imagine. I know that's like very tepid and kind of like frail way of putting it, but I can't assert too much else besides that.
It's very similar to what Tiffany Latavo King says at the front of her essay, isn't it? There are other ways of naming one another as relations. And even though it seems quite unsatisfactory on its face to not immediately fill in what that other way is, while allowing oneself to be inspired by existing modes, right? I hope that in both For Surrogacy Now and this book, I give a lot of care, love, and respect to the you know, the forms of you know, embodiment otherwise, and practices of you know, surthrival in the cracks, the skills that are developed in the interstices, you know, but I think it's also important to not necessarily see that as, you know, as a blueprint, right? Colonial utopianism is about the search for blueprints, and the building of a society on a sort of terra nullius of the mind, right? But critical utopianism, as you know, and decolonial utopianism,
Critical
is
utopianism.
about an orientation of
Critical utopianism. Critical race theory.
Denaturalization, a simple negationism of the natural shibboleths that are sort of given to us to orient our you know, our lives and ourselves.
Critical, here is basically what you just said. Critical utopia is about denaturalization. So she is hyper aware that what she is suggesting is going to require a fundamental rewiring of the human brain, because they're talking about, and again, correct me if you think I'm wrong about this, they're talking about denaturalizing the innate instincts that we have in order to, in part of being like a member of a family, which is part in our survival mechanism, right? The reason that we have genetic biological ties to people is for our own survival. They're going to take care of us. They're going to feed us, things like that. But she just said that critical utopia, like, you have to denaturalize these instincts in order to achieve critical utopia. Let's just listen to that again. I want to see if I got that right. We're almost done, guys. Hang in.
For blueprints, and the building of a society on a sort of terra nullius of the mind, right? But critical utopianism, as you know, and decolonial utopianism is about an orientation of collective, sort of practical denaturalization, a simple negationism of the natural shibboleths that are sort of given to us to orient our you know, our lives and ourselves. I think you know, I've become, more confident since writing Full Surrogacy now, that abolition really is the right word for what needs to be done with the family. And I had moments of non-conviction in that regard over the last few years. And I used to say, because how unpleasant it is really to upset people like this all the time. I used to say, don't worry, I mean real families against the family, but I think actually it's looking at the Indigenous and Black revolutionaries of the archive that I was looking at, that made me realize that there is nothing for us there. There's that being recognized as a family by the state and by capital it is not a good enough horizon. It's not a good horizon at all, arguably. And I will just sort of keep insisting really that while it makes complete sense to feel and indeed be defensive and protective of the forms of nurture, and yes, indeed, non-egoic, partially sort of non-proprietarian and collectivized social reproduction that exist in sort of alternative structures. Side note, the family isn't embodied in, right? Like, just to say, I hope I say that enough in the book. It's not like people are really out here doing that. Like, who? Like, maybe one or two. See, like it's an order, right? Like that image isn't somehow incarnated everywhere, right? But that doesn't mean that its fictiveness doesn't mean that it's not materially kind of up in all of our business. Like defining value production on a global scale. But I think it's it's important to keep kind of like doggedly and almost like childishly repeating, that this place that is supposed to be a haven is where you are most likely to be murdered. It's where you are most likely to be raped. It's where you're most likely to be abused, right? Just surely there is, another way. And insisting on it being about the privatization of care, I think, is very clarifying in this regard, because it means that it does apply, to all kinds of different populations who, nevertheless are, under the rule of capital. None of us really escapes that. And so the horizon is extremely totalizing, and I understand.
Something that I don't know if if she hasn't wrapped her head around it, or if she's not acknowledging it, where she seems to think that if we just get rid of capitalism and we just get rid of private property and we just get rid of the family, that everyone's going to have a great and wonderful life. But what she's not acknowledging is that when we get rid of all those things, we will be completely 100%, we will be completely beholden to the state. And she seems to think that that's like a great idea. And they don't acknowledge the implications of that. You want to know why? Because she thinks she's going to be at the top of the power structure, when in fact she's just I wouldn't even say she's a useful idiot. She's a true believer.
The problems that one might have with that, but I guess I stick to it. And thank you so much for the challenges and the conversation that we've all had today, which I found extremely generative.
I think that's a very good note to end on.
I think so too. Yeah. I just want to remind everyone before we go, first of all, thank you, Sophie, so much for sharing your book with us and for your really generous responses to all these challenges and questions. We'll again try to save the chat, and just a reminder that on September 4th.
All right, I'm not interested in allowing them to promote their events any further. Guys, that was a stream called The Problem of the Family with Sophie Lewis. if you think the stuff that's being talked about in the media is the crazy stuff, no. That is but an entryway into the truly crazy stuff in the legitimate world of socialism. So apparently what we discovered today is that motherhood is violence, and that what we need to do to eliminate all violence in the world is to eliminate the family structure, because the family structure is property. But the big thing that we learned today, and I just want to bring this up for people in the chat that maybe joined a little bit late, and I will be leaving the full stream up on the channel if you want to watch the full stream, and I would encourage you to do so, because this is one of the most batshit insane things we have ever watched. What we really learned today is that their goal is to abolish childhood. To abolish childhood. They want to get rid of childhood entirely. Children are but tiny adults. They are humans who deserve full ownership over themselves. They are one of the most oppressed populations in the world. Therefore, we have to abolish childhood. And do you know what happens when we abolish childhood? We abolish pedophilia. We abolish grooming. She literally said earlier in the presentation that if we just get rid of childhood, this whole problem of calling out grooming, it just goes away, because there are no more children, therefore there's no more grooming. There are no more children, therefore there's no more pedophilia. There are still little people that are very young, but they're not going to be children anymore. They're going to be little humans. And we are going to relate to them as little humans. That is not an exaggeration of what was said. And I've got some clips of it, and it was earlier in the presentation. These are the legitimate socialists, guys. These are what they want. This is not play pretend AOC LARPing socialism crying at the border. This is the real deal. And what you all need to hear is that these people are winning. These people are driving culture. These people are driving the Overton window. These people are winning. Yay. But I did almost finish my shawl. Almost. I got a little bit left. I did almost finish this giant ass shawl. So I guess there's that. This is a really big shawl. It's a really big shawl. Really big shawl. All right, guys, that is all we have for today. Now, as a reminder, I will be doing happy hour on my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke tomorrow. I am probably going to start that around 2 p.m. Usually we do it at 5. Tomorrow we're going to do it earlier because I have someplace I need to be at 5. And so I got to wrap it up a little earlier. Make sure you are in my locals or like following me somewhere on social media. Locals is the best, kb.locals.com. You can get in there for free. You don't have to pay. You only pay if you want to unlock all the features. That way you'll be able to know when I'm streaming tomorrow. I always announce it there first. And if you would like to support the work I'm doing, there are a couple ways that you can do that. Now, we do have movie night. So reminder, Saturday in locals, and also for Patreon supporters. On Saturday, we have Bitchcraft at 3 p.m. Bitchcraft is an open Zoom call where we bitch and we craft. You can do any craft you want: knitting, crochet, painting, drawing, sewing, quilting, cleaning your gun, folding laundry. You can just come hang out and play video games, or just come hang out in general. Whatever you want to do. Saturday at 3 p.m. we're going to be doing that. I'm going to send out the link to my locals and Patreon supporters on Saturday prior to the call. And then on Sunday at 8 p.m., we are doing movie night in the supporter Discord. We are watching Demolition Man, which is going to be great. I'm really excited by it. So how can you get into the supporter Discord, you ask? Well, I'm glad you did. You can head over to activelyunwoke.com/support. You can sign up as a supporter on my Patreon. You can sign up as a supporter in my locals. You can sign up as a paid supporter on one of my Substacks. All of my Substack articles are free, but you can sign up as a supporter if you want. And probably the best way, the way I would prefer that everyone donate, is to go over to my Indiegogo campaign for Schools Exposed. I want to train 10 10,000 parents how to find out what the schools are teaching their kids using publicly available information. I'm raising money in order to be able to do it. Lots of great perks that you can get for that. And I really think this could change the world, guys. I really do. I don't want to pat myself on the back too much for coming up with this idea, but I really do think that this idea is, no pun intended, revolutionary. Because if we can train 10,000 parents about how to find out what the schools are teaching their kids, so those parents can keep an eye on those schools, those parents can keep those schools in check, those parents can train other parents on how to do it, we have a literal army. And that's what I'm trying to do. And you can find out more about my campaign to do that at unwokearmy.com/parents. That's going to redirect you right to this campaign. If you can also find a link pinned to the top of the chat or in the description below. And we are fundraising for another 45 days, 46 days. We've already met our goal. So this project will be funded. This program will be launching in January. And there's still lots of great perks that you can get, to include first access to the program when it launches in January. So head over there, check that out. And everyone who supports the campaign or supports my work, either Locals, Patreon, or Substack, you guys are all going to get, and also if you become a channel member on YouTube too, I'll throw that in. You guys are all going to get access to the supporter Discord. And that means you get to join us for movie night on Sunday at 8 p.m. to watch Demolition Man. It's going to be really great. All right, guys, take care. Mount that like button on your way out the door, and we'll see you tomorrow for happy hour on youtube.com/activelyunwoke. Bye.